Chapter 161 right side. Quinn and Vorden started to head back to their dorm room, making sure not to go too fast. They didn't want another situation where a student would see them running through the halls, which would draw attention and make them look suspicious. But as they walked through the halls, several thoughts were running through both of their minds. Quinn could no longer feel the connection between himself and Peter, while Vorden was kicking himself for not making sure that Peter and Layla were okay. He just never thought Peter would get hungry so quickly. He only ate early yesterday. They had finally arrived just outside the room, and when they opened the door, the first thing they saw was the broken window and glass shards all over the floor. Where's Layla? Quinn asked. You don't think Peter already ate her, do you? But if that was the case, Quinn would have gotten a message from the system, and also there was no blood to be seen in the room. That's when they heard a small little sobbing sound coming from one of the corners. As they turned their heads to see where the sound was coming from, they could see Layla curled up into a ball sobbing in the corner. Oh, Quinn said with a sigh of relief. You're still alive. Layla looked up and noticed the two had arrived back together. Where were you guys? Layla said with an angry tone. I can't believe you left me on my own. You know I'm not strong enough to deal with something like this. It was clear Layla had been given quite a shock. Quinn did his best to calm her down. He looked at her sobbing away and didn't know what to do in this type of situation. He had never encountered a girl crying before. Then a memory came into his head, one that he had almost forgotten. When he was only 3 years old, Quinn had gotten lost from his mother in the supermarket. The place seemed to be a whole different world to him at the time. He felt alone, frightened, and when his mom finally found him, she had given him a big hug that made all the bad feelings go away. Just then, Quinn wrapped his hands around Layla tightly. It's okay. Don't worry, Layla. I'm sorry about all of this. It's all my fault. I should have known better, Quinn said. Although Layla was frightened, she had expected Quinn to do something like this. The hug felt nice and warm and reminded her of her family. But what actually made everything even better was the look on Vorden's face. For some reason, when Vorden saw this, he had the look of worry on his face. Layla thought that perhaps it was jealousy because she was getting closer to Quinn. But actually, Vorden worried about Syl. Luckily, Syl was quietly sleeping inside the dark room and didn't get to see this scene. The hug went on for a while to the point where it seemed to be getting awkward for Layla. This was because Quinn was unsure about the appropriate amount of time to hug someone. Quinn, I'm okay now. You can let go, Layla said as she made sure to wipe away the remaining tears from her face. Layla, you need to tell us what happened. Where's Peter? Vorden asked. Layla recalled the events of what happened while the two of them were away, saying that it hadn't happened that long ago. Around 15 minutes had passed. This coincided with when Quinn had felt the connection between the two of them got lost. If he's outside, I have to go find him, before we have another Earl situation on our hands, Quinn said. This is bad, Vorden said. Especially since they already suspect us, we can't deal with a situation like this right now. Quinn then started to get ready to leave the room. You two stay here. If worst comes to worst, I can use my shadow skill to hide myself. Besides, even if someone saw me, they won't know who I am. Wait, Vorden shouted. I'm coming with you. If Peter is like Layla says he is, then you're going to need me. We're just going to have to go through with Plan B. Quinn didn't like it. He didn't like it one bit. Whatever happened, he didn't want to go through with Plan B no matter what. But right now, what choice did they have? All right, come on, let's go, Quinn said. Layla, it might be best if you head back to your own room. Also, if you can prepare some blood for me. I might need it when I come back. Layla nodded as the two of them went off downstairs. Quinn, sometimes, I think you're too nice for this world, Layla thought. After clearing away the broken pieces of glass, Layla decided to head towards her own dorm room. She knocked a few times before entering, pondering if Aaron was already back or not. There was no answer, and when she entered the room, Aaron was nowhere to be seen. Underneath her bed, she pulled out a little chest with a digital lock. After entering the authorization code, the chest opened, and she took out a sphere-shaped object. She then brought the ball with her over to the room door. That way she could hear if anyone was coming in, and she could quickly put it away again. Pressing the top of the ball caused it to light up, and she waited for a few moments as the light dimmed in and out. Hello, Agent 84. Do you have another report to give? A female voice said, coming from the communication ball. Yes, ma'am. I wish to give you an update on the report I gave you earlier. It turns out what I believed would be good for our cause turned out not to be so good for us after all. I will send you the full details later. That is a shame to hear. The female voice coming from the orb said, I hope you do get to enjoy your time left at the school. Continue on with the original mission. Also on another note, Mr. True Dream will be visiting the base soon. We are unsure of which candidates will be selected this time, but don't worry too much if you are selected. Noted, Layla replied. May Pure be with you. The woman said. May Pure be with you. Layla replied in a way that made it sound forced. Quinn, I hope I'm doing the right thing not just for my sake, but for everyone's. She thought to herself. As soon as the Quinn and Vorden went past the school gate, they were free to rush off and run about, now that they were away from the eyes of the soldiers and guards. They had just entered the path, and it seemed the place was empty of people, probably because the curfew was coming up. Vorden, I'm going to go on up ahead. I think I got Peter's scent. Quinn said. Peter's scent? What are you, a dog? Vorden said sarcastically. But the next second a shadow had gone under Quinn's body, and soon after it was replaced with a black figure, a mask on his face and his beast equipment on his arms and legs. Into the night he sped away, rushing into the forest. Chapter 162, Starved Ghoul. Peter's senses were all over the place. He couldn't even tell what was in front of him. Everything just seemed on high alert, and his vision was quite blurry, while the smells all around him were overwhelming. The grass underneath his feet, the wood sap formed the trees. It was hard to keep them all separate in his mind. In the end, the only thing he could concentrate on was the human-shaped figure in front of him. The pain had gotten the better of him, and he would now do anything to get rid of that hunger. As Fex saw the ghoul leap out from the forest, he prepared himself by getting into a fighting stance. It had leapt quite a distance from the forest and out onto the path. While it was in the air, it had stuck out all of its limbs very wide, like it was some type of beast. Then at the right moment, Fex lifted his head of the ground and swung it outward like a whip, hitting Peter right in the center of his body. He went flying through the air quite a distance away until his body banged on the floor and skittered away. Well, that should keep it down for a while, Fex said to himself. However, nearly instantly Peter was standing up once again. A few of his ribs had been broken in the process, but they regenerated almost instantly. Even though Peter was a ghoul, Fex was sure he had used enough force to take one out. Is he starved? Now who would be stupid enough to turn someone and not have everything prepared beforehand? Fex thought, not knowing how Peter came to be a ghoul. A starved ghoul healed a lot quicker than usual, and they were dangerous to go up against even for vampires. Still, this also came with their own downsides. The more times it would heal itself, the more energy it would use. It was basically starving itself more each time it healed, and eventually there wouldn't be any energy left, and healing would come to an end. Peter came rushing forward once again, but Fex didn't look too worried. I'm really not into killing other people's family members. If I did, then it could start a civil war, and I don't want to be the one to blame for that. Fex then started to fiddle about with his fingers, pulling them in and out as if he was making something, but when looking at his hands, nothing could be seen. With Peter coming closer to him, he was finally ready. He ran towards Peter, and just when Peter was about to swing for his head, Fex ducked at the right moment. He dashed forward, not touching Peter, but swiping his hands around him in the process. This continued onward for a while. Peter would strike, while Fex would dodge, staying close to him, moving his hands but not touching. Then Peter started to notice something. His own movements were getting slower and slower as the fight continued. His arms were the first to slow down, and eventually, it was his legs. When he looked down and noticed what was happening, it was too late. Peter had fallen to the ground and was now tangled and tied up in some type of string. It's a shame. If you worked for me, I could turn you into a really good puppet. You're quite strong for a ghoul. It took more strength than I thought to slow you down. As Fex started to think of puppets, another person came into his mind, the girl who had frozen him to the wall. Now, she would make a perfect human puppet. I wonder if she would accept. Fex then knelt down and looked at Peter, who was trying his best to break free, but the string was almost indestructible and was being powered by Fex's MC. He then lifted Peter's head off the ground and looked into his eyes, casting some type of spell. Suppress the hunger within yourself, calm down. After saying those words, Peter felt something inside his body change. The hunger suddenly didn't feel as bad as before, and he was slowly starting to get a hold of himself a bit more. He could now see the person in front of him clearly. He also noticed that this person smelt different to other people anyway. I didn't create you, so the spell won't last for long, Fex explained. Now tell me, Which family do you belong to? If you're a crazed ghoul, you couldn't have been turned too long ago. Otherwise, you would have evolved by now. Are you even registered? Is that why you won't speak? Although Fex was saying these words, Peter didn't understand any of it. He understood the words individually, but had no clue what was happening. Seeing that Peter would no longer answer, Fex let go of his head, allowing it to fall to the ground. These damn ghouls, they're always loyal to their leader. It was a waste trying to get anything out of him. Hey, if you don't eat something soon, you will get us caught. And when that happens, your whole family will be punished for it. Fex was now sitting on the floor calmly talking to Peter. Even though Peter had just tried to attacking him, he was wondering why this person wasn't angry with him. This was a first in Peter's whole life. If he ever tried fighting back, even just once, then the punishment would come back around tenfold. He learned that quickly during his school days, so he decided to never fight back again. But this time Peter was the one attacking someone, and it was clear this person was a lot stronger than him. So why wasn't he being hit, stabbed, burnt, or even killed? Peter just couldn't understand it. What do you mean, my family? Peter finally answered. They have nothing to do with this. They're just normal shopkeepers. Keep them out of this. It was my fault that I attacked you. Just punish me. Hearing Peter's words, Fex felt like something wasn't quite right about this whole thing. However, he didn't have long to think about it, for suddenly out from the side a big line of red blood was shot out. Fex didn't even notice it until the last moment, causing him to take the blow with his bare hands. He was pushed back a few feet before he could break the attack. He wasn't wearing any beast gear on his body, and the same could be said for his hands as well. Blood was now dripping from his forearms where the attacks had wounded him. But what was most surprising to Fex was the fact that he recognized the attack. It was a blood attack that only other vampires could use. When he looked up, he could see what could only be described as a demon. White, hollow, menacing eyes, with a mask and a Japanese demon design covering his mouth. As Peter looked up, even he didn't recognize the figure standing in front of him. But of course it was Quinn in his new suit. Chapter 163, Vampire vs. Vampire. The attack was sudden, and Fex couldn't quite see what had hit him, but as he looked at the man in the strange suit, he was wondering what on earth this person was. It didn't look like any outfit humans usually wore, and for some reason, his entire body was covered. Is that thing even comfortable? I imagine it must be pretty tight down there. Fex said sarcastically while glancing at the strange person's groin area. While moving closer to the mysterious figure, Fex made sure not to make any sudden movements. The wounds on his forearms were already starting to heal, so they didn't bother him much anymore. Hey, I know you might just be trying to save this. Fex then looked at Peter, who was lying on the floor between them. Human, I guess, but I think you don't understand. I've tied him up for your and everybody else's safety. I suggest you go back home so we can forget any of this ever happened. As he got closer, Fex started to notice something, or rather the absence of something. Where's his scent? I'm not smelling anything from him, he thought. Usually, humans and vampires had this aroma around them. Everybody has a specific smell. It was what attracted humans around them. Although vampires could suppress this to some extent, they could never completely get rid of it, especially not in front of other vampires. But for the first time, he met a person who had no scent at all. Because of this, he couldn't identify this mysterious person or even guess his race. This made him a bit more careful around this suspicious person. Quinn, on the other hand, had no clue of his suit's side effect. While wearing the mask, he wasn't able to use his nose to its full capacity. The suit that blocked out the sun was also blocking out his smell. Quinn's mind was occupied with other things right now. He was trying to decide if he had to kill this person or not. The question was, had Peter attacked this person to try and eat him, and did the person manage to defend himself and also tie Peter up with his ability? Or had nothing happened yet, and had this person randomly attacked Peter and then tied him up? For some reason, Peter was very calm right now. This was not what Quinn had been expecting, because before he lost all sense of control over Peter through their bond. Quinn's identity was still a secret, at least for now. His number one priority was getting Peter out of the situation and back to their dorm room. He could deal with any other issues later. Quinn had a feeling from the way Fex was moving that he was being cautious. If Quinn was going to make a dash for it to get Peter out, the most likely outcome would be that a fight was going to break out. If that was the case, it would be best if Quinn first found out his ability. Inspect. Name: Fex Sanguinis. Race: Vampire. After seeing the information, Quinn froze for a bit. He had to reread it twice just to make sure what he saw was correct. After what the blonde vampire in the system had said, he knew there had to be other vampires out there. But he never expected to see one in the same school as him. Then a horrible thought ran through his mind. He remembered what the blonde vampire in the system had told him. Now that he was a vampire, they would come after him, and to be careful of them. It was too soon. Quinn didn't even know how strong he was compared to other vampires. If this new vampire wanted to take Peter away, then he could have him. Quinn wanted to change things, but that wasn't going to be possible with him dead. But when Quinn tried to run away, something inside of him gave him a jolt. A force was pulling him towards Peter and refusing to let him leave. At the same time, Peter was feeling the same thing. Quinn then fell down on one knee, breathing heavy. "What is this?" Quinn asked. "It's your family bond," the system explained. "The two of you are bonded by the magic of your blood. Similar to how Peter can never do you, as his master, any harm, you can never desert him." "What is this vampire family crap?" Quinn said as he got up from the floor. If he couldn't run away without Peter, then he only had one choice. Skill Shadow Cloak activated. Right in front of Fex's eyes, his opponent had disappeared, and without giving off any smell, it was hard for him to locate this person. "So, it looks like you're going to try and fight me. Well, you made the wrong decision." Suddenly, a tingling feeling he felt in his neck alerted him that something was coming. A claw-like blood mark randomly came out from his right side, and behind it, several more followed. However, before the attack left Quinn's hands, Fex was able to retaliate. Blood barrier. Swiping his hands upward, a thin red barrier was formed. As each swipe hit the barrier, it would shake a little, but was completely unaffected by the attack. But seeing Quinn's attack made Fex realize something. The attack produced just now was a blood swipe. It was the same basic skill all vampires were required to learn. "Wait, you're a vampire. We're on the same side. Stop," Fex shouted. Even though Quinn could hear Fex's words, he chose to ignore them over the systems. It was quite possible this whole thing was an act. Day's skill failed. Quinn was hoping the Day's skill would go through, allowing him to flash step behind his opponent and perform a hammer strike, but it had failed, making him change plans. Putting both of his hands together, Quinn formed a larger blood swipe, throwing out a single large attack. "Look, if this ghoul belongs to your family, maybe I can help you. We can figure out something together." Seeing the red line of attack, Fex had no choice. He too placed both hands together and let out a blood swipe of his own. Only his was significantly larger than Quinn's. As the two blood swipes collided, Fex's consumed Quinn's and carried on going forward. The only thing Quinn could do was use his flash step to avoid the attack. Quinn then activated his boots. If his blood swipe wasn't strong enough, then he would need to rely on his speed. He went in close and threw out a fist, performing blood spray at the same time. However, each attack was deflected by Fex. After seeing Quinn struggling in hand-to-hand combat, Fex found everything quite strange. Does he not even know the basic martial arts? It was something all vampires were required to learn, but Quinn was throwing his punches out quite randomly. But then he also knew some advanced skills, such as the flash step. So he couldn't be a beginner. "If you keep going like this, you'll die before giving me a chance to help you," Fex said, with urgency in his voice. Quinn had used up a lot of his HP, just trying to hit Fex even once, but nothing seemed to be working. "Just get out of here," Peter shouted. "Leave me. There's no point in both of us dying." Once again, Fex was confused, but this time by the ghoul. If they belonged to the same family, the blood bond wouldn't allow one to be deserted in time of need. With nothing working, Quinn only had one choice. He threw out a blood swipe and caught it using his shadow control. With the scythe being held in his hands and his suit of armor and mask on, he truly looked like a Grim Reaper. "Is that the shadow ability? But that's been lost for years," Fex said. "Just who is this guy?" Suddenly, a beep was heard coming from all three of their watches. As they looked down, they noticed the time was 9:45. It was the 15-minute warning sound telling them curfew time was coming. Chapter 164 Plan B initiated. Running as fast as he could, Vorden desperately tried to catch up with Quinn, who was running in front. However, no matter how fast he went, he couldn't keep up, and he even lost sight of him, Quinn, and could no longer be seen in the vicinity. Nevertheless, he didn't give up, for he knew that Quinn would need him once they found Peter. Beep. When he was only a short distance away from the park, where he assumed Quinn was heading to. His watch lit up and the sound of a notification was heard. When he looked at the watch, the time stated that it was 9:45. This meant that they only had 15 minutes before curfew time. In most cases, it wouldn't be so bad, since students would just be brought in and be punished a little. But for Quinn and Vorden, who were already suspected in perpetrating a murder, it would look awfully suspicious if the two of them were out at night after curfew and didn't have a good reason for it. Knowing this, Vorden had no choice but to turn around and head back to the dorms. He had to trust that Quinn would find Peter and catch up to him in time. Seeing the message on the watch, Quinn started to panic. If he wanted to make it back in time, he would need to leave now. He didn't have time to rescue Peter. Once again, when Quinn tried to move, he was stopped by the bond. He tried to force through, but it was pulling him down to the ground. Fex could see something was up. "Hey, we need to get back, right?" Fex said. "That skinny guy said something about being in our rooms before 10. I don't know why you're attacking me, but you need to understand we're on the same side." Fex looked at Peter and had a little hunch on what the latter was thinking, but it wasn't something he could confirm right now. "Look, you aren't meant to be here, neither am I, so I won't tell anyone about you. I'll leave it in your hands, but if you need any help, then I suggest that you come to me." Soon after, a cloud of mist filled the air where Fex was once standing. As the mist started to disappear, it looked like Fex was vanishing away with it. "Is he really gone?" Quinn asked. "That mist is a transformation spell," the system explained. "Most likely, he has turned into something that allows him to pick up more speed." With that knowledge, a weight was lifted from his shoulders, but there was still another problem weighing on his mind, and he was soon reminded by it. Peter started to scream at the top of his lungs. It felt like he was being stabbed repeatedly in his stomach, and as his hunger grew, so did his strength. The tight strings that were once holding him down were starting to snap one by one. "Quinn, quickly, give him some of your blood. It will only be temporary, but it should calm him down as you have more control over him," said the system. Quinn used Shadow Equip to put his equipment back into his dimensional space, including the suit and the mask he was wearing. Then, using the tip of his tooth, he bit down on his thumb, causing blood to be drawn. He walked closer to Peter, and after just taking a few steps, Peter lifted his head and turned it towards Quinn. A snarling sound was made as if to give a warning for Quinn not to get any closer. Peter's eyes were now red once again, and his fangs were on full display. "Are you sure he won't hurt me?" Quinn said. "Positive. Vampires have a set of rules that they must follow. Otherwise, their own powers will begin to retaliate to them. Remember how you felt just moments ago when you tried to flee, right? No matter how hard you fought against it, it was impossible to fight back. It will be the same for him if he tries to hurt you." Looking at Peter, who continued to snarl at him, he still wasn't quite sure whether to believe the system or not, but he had no choice. Peter was like this because of him, and now there was no going back. The snarling persisted as he went forward, but exactly as the system had said, even though Quinn was practically holding Peter's head, he never tried to bite him. Quinn then lifted his hand and started to squeeze the blood from it, allowing it to drip into Peter's mouth. Just like that, in almost an instant, Peter started to calm down. "How long will this last?" Quinn asked. "Long enough," the system replied. Placing Peter on his back and equipping his beast boots, he activated his wind walk. He no longer had any time to take it easy, so he ran as fast as he could back to the school without any intention of slowing down. Vorden had safely made it back into the room on time, and Layla had left long before to go back to her dorm room. In the kitchen, laid out on the table, he had gotten what looked like a meat cleaver. "Okay, Vorden, you can do this. I can't believe you're going this far," Ratton said. "I have to, otherwise Peter will endanger us all." "Then just kill the guy? I'll even do it for you like the last time," Ratton replied. "But Quinn doesn't want that, and Syl is finally starting to change. We can't have him go back to how he once was," Vorden said. For once Ratton didn't have a stinging reply. Vorden then placed his arm on the table, laying it flat, while grabbing the meat cleaver with the other. "Here goes nothing." He swung it down, but at the last second, he stopped just inches above his limb. "I can't do it. How can anyone cut their own arm off?" A thud sound was heard in the room, and as Vorden looked up, he could see that Quinn had arrived while bearing Peter on his back. The two of them had come through the broken window. "Looks like I just made it in time," Quinn said, relieved. The sound on their watches went off again, indicating that it was now 10 o'clock. A ping would then be sent to the security office, revealing the location of all those who were not located in their rooms at that moment. However, as soon as Peter had entered the room, the smell of a fresh human flesh had entered his nose, and he once again succumbed to his crazed self. Quinn quickly held him down using all of his strength, but the struggle was tough. It felt like Peter was just as strong as Quinn. The only thing that he could do was to put on his gauntlets, but if he did, the second he let go of Peter, he knew he would go after Vorden. Now is not the time to be hesitating, Vorden said, but once again, as he looked at the meat cleaver in his hand, his heart started beating like crazy. "Arg, you big pussy. Let me do it," Ratton said as he took control of the seat. Without hesitation, Ratton swung the meat cleaver down onto his own arm. Unlike Vorden, though, he didn't hesitate one bit. Still, the bone was thick and he wasn't able to be cut off the arm cleanly in one go. Blood kept on spilling out of the wound. Ratton lifted it up and continued to hack at his own limb until eventually, his arm had completely come off. "Here you go," Vorden said as he chucked over his arm towards Quinn and Peter. Chapter 165 Family Case. As Vorden's arm was flying through the air, Peter managed to overpower Quinn and push him off. Peter leapt into the air like a dog trying to catch the arm. It would have looked funny if it wasn't so gruesome. It was as if he was playing catch, but instead of a stick, he was catching an arm. His jaws extended much further than would be possible for a normal human. When he caught the arm in his mouth, he immediately bit down on it and started eating. Vorden looked down at the meat cleaver. It was covered in blood, and so was the kitchen counter where he had cut his arm off. Strangely, there wasn't any blood on the hand holding the cleaver. "Vorden, are you okay?" Quinn asked, with a worried expression on his face. "Don't worry, I'll be fine," Vorden replied with a little smile. "Guess we needed Plan B more than we thought." When Quinn looked at Vorden, he had expected to see blood gushing from the wound where he had cut off his own arm. Instead, he saw that the wound had closed itself and was already starting to heal bit by bit. At the same time, Peter was still gnawing away on Vorden's arm, entirely focused on devouring its skin and bone. Vorden felt a bit strange, seeing Peter eating his arm right in front of him. Instinctively, he grabbed at his arm. He felt the part below his elbow was already starting to grow back. This made him sigh in relief. Luckily, the healing ability he acquired was already starting to work. "I hope this is going to be enough for him, because I don't feel like going through this again today," Vorden said. "It should be. When he's finished eating, he will calm down a bit," Quinn replied. He was just repeating the words of the system right now, because he wasn't sure of anything anymore. When Peter finally finished eating the arm, Quinn felt strange energy surging through his body. It felt the same as the first time Peter ate human flesh. It was a strange situation for Peter because he was aware of everything that was happening, but he didn't have control over his body because he was fully consumed by his hunger. Looking at Vorden, Peter noticed his arm was missing. With fear in his voice, he stammered, "Vorden, your arm." "I don't know." Peter felt appalled with himself. "This thing," Vorden said as he lifted his stump. "Don't worry about it. In a few hours it will have grown back. This was our backup plan in case you lost control before we had found a permanent solution for you. I just didn't want you thinking of me like a chicken nugget you can eat whenever you get hungry," Vorden said, trying to lighten the mood. "Before coming back to our room, I went down to the canteen and copied the ability of a student who has regenerative power. We didn't expect you to be hungry so soon, after you fed on Earl only yesterday." All three of them were silent for a while. They were thinking about the crazy situation that they were in right now. After some time, Peter broke the silence. "Thank you, the both of you. You have always been nice to me and treated me right. Even after I betrayed you, you still saved my life, and even now you went to such lengths to help me." As they looked around the room, they realized how much of a mess they had made. There was a big hole in the window where Peter had smashed through it, and shards of broken glass could be seen underneath it. Blood was all over the place. On the kitchen counter, on the floor where Peter had devoured the arm, even on the ceiling from when the arm had flown through the air. "Well, I guess we better get started with cleaning this place before anyone finds out what happened here," Quinn said. Each of them took it in turn cleaning up the place, but there wasn't much they could do about some area. They couldn't magically restore a window, and the scratches made on the wooden floor could only be fixed so much. When Vorden was cleaning the kitchen counter, he said, "Hey Quinn, you fancy a drink?" At the same time, he was squeezing some blood from a towel. Quinn was amazed at how Vorden could still crack a joke in a situation like this. But then again, nothing ever seemed to faze the guy. Since turning into a vampire, Quinn wasn't affected much by the sight of blood anymore. Even Peter eating Vorden's arm didn't bother him much. What surprised him was how well Vorden was handling it. While they were busy cleaning up, Quinn had the chance to ask the system some questions, because right now he had a lot of them. "Do you know how long Peter will be required to eat human flesh?" Quinn asked. "Well, for once I have some good news for you. Peter is the type of ghoul that needs to be fed daily." The system responded. "If that is good news, you have some sick sense of humor." Quinn thought. "Just wait, young one. The ones that require food more often quickly get stronger. If you carry on feeding Peter for a week, then by the end of it, he should evolve." In the middle of their conversation, a notification screen popped up. "New quest received. Make your family stronger. 2/7 feed your ghoul. Peter, 7 different types of human flesh. Reward, family member evolution." "Well, will you look at that? It looks like my hunch was right," the system said. Quinn found the words of the system strange. Was he not in charge of everything? Until this point, he thought that the AI and the systems were one and the same thing, but that didn't seem to be the case. "I thought you made the quests," Quinn asked. "Me?" the system replied. "I see why you would think so. I was designed after the original owner, the person whose the idea it was to create the system. My thoughts, my actions, everything is based around him. However, the system itself was created by someone else, and before you ask, the man often changed names throughout time, so even if I told you his name, you wouldn't know who he is." Since there wasn't much Quinn could do about the system for now, and it wasn't really a problem, he decided to focus on the other matter. Looking at the quest, he noticed something that would cause them even more problems. The quest stated that they would need 7 different types of human flesh. Just like Quinn with his blood, he would only get stronger when consuming a new person's blood. The same could be said for Peter, who would have to consume different types of flesh. "If, and I mean a big if," Quinn said, "if we carry on using Vorden, will it still suppress his hunger?" "Yes, although he won't be able to evolve as quickly." Looking at Vorden's stump, it had now grown back to the point where it was just starting to form the wrist. He hated the fact that he had to rely on Vorden, and using him would only be delaying the inevitable. Right now, he needed to find a solution as fast as possible. While these thoughts ran through his mind, he remembered the fight he had with Fex. Just before they left, he said, if he needed any help, to seek him out. Quinn had no idea if he could trust him or not, and if the two of them got into a fight again, he knew in his current state he would definitely lose. Although Quinn didn't get hurt during the fight, he also wasn't able to land a single blow, and it looked like the amount of skills Fex had surpassed his own. The only thing Quinn had that could give him an advantage was his shadow ability. However, at the same time, he still hadn't seen what Fex's ability was, or if he even had one. But with no plans of his own and no guidance from the system, who else could he go to ask for help? He wouldn't be able to attack him while they were in the school. Vampires were a secret to the world, and he was sure Fex would want to keep it that way as well. It was a risk, but he would have to confront Fex and ask for his help. Chapter 166, Tricking Duke. The 2-day rest period was over, and students were now required to go back to classes as usual. Vorden, Peter, and Quinn didn't feel like they had rested at all. Over the last few days, they had experienced one high-tense situation after another. In the morning, Quinn and Peter didn't go down to the canteen for breakfast. They had decided to stay in their dorm room. While Vorden still had the regenerative ability, he had decided to cut off another one of his limbs, but Vorden actually looked scared about cutting off his own body part again. At first, Quinn was against him doing it again, but Vorden had convinced him it was necessary to make sure Peter wouldn't go crazy with hunger again today. When Quinn had finally agreed, they decided to cut off a bigger limb, because it would give Peter more meat to feed on. Eventually, they chose to cut off one of Vorden's legs. Quinn couldn't bear for Vorden to go through so much pain again. That's why he offered to help. With his greater strength, he was able to cut through the entire leg in one clean stroke. It took Quinn some time to mentally prepare for it, but he finally convinced himself that it would mean less pain for Vorden, which gave him the resolve he needed to do it. Vorden looked scared when Quinn was about to cut his limb off, but all of a sudden his facial expression changed. Instead of fear, it now showed anger. Vorden shouted at Quinn, "Just do it. You little wimp. After eating human flesh for 2 days in a row, it seemed like normal raw meat was no longer an option for Peter. When he tried to eat it, he immediately threw it back up, like his body was rejecting the raw animal meat. From now on, Peter would only be able to eat raw human flesh. Quinn was quite upset about this, because he didn't want to see Vorden go through this painful process again. Quinn now wanted Peter to evolve as soon as possible, as hopefully, this would help with Peter's dietary problems. After Vorden went down to the canteen to eat, Peter was looking at the black bag with Vorden's leg in it. He couldn't stop himself from drooling, and his saliva was dripping out of his mouth and falling onto the floor. Are you going to eat that or what? Don't let Vorden's sacrifice go to waste, Quinn said, while holding a glass of Vorden's blood in his hand. They had collected it after cutting Vorden's arm off. It would have been a shame to let it go to waste. Quinn swirled the blood around in the glass before he drank it all in one big gulp. It tasted nice and sweet, and when he was finished drinking, he had a smile on his face. How do you do it? Peter asked with awe and horror on his face. How can you be so calm about it all? How do you deal with this sudden change so easily? Trust me on this one, Peter. At first I didn't, Quinn replied, looking pensive. Think of it this way. Everyone has multiple sides that they show to people. They are different with their family members compared to their friends, and they are different with their girlfriends compared to their family and friends. But does that mean those other sides don't exist when they are with different people? We choose to show people which side of us we want them to see. This way different people will form different opinions of us. I was scared too, but I choose not to show it to others. I was also very lucky that I found someone who helped me deal with everything. As he was saying this to Peter, his mind had immediately gone to Layla. Like he told Peter, he was extremely lucky that she was the first person who found out about his secret. Since she found out she had been nothing but supportive, she also helped him learn a lot about being a vampire. He wondered how different things might have been if it wasn't for her. While Quinn was talking to him, Peter had been trying to hold back from eating the leg that was in front of him. However, he could no longer stop himself. As Peter started chomping down on Vorden's leg, Quinn turned around to look away. Even though it didn't bother him much, it still felt wrong to him looking at one friend eating another friend's leg. Quinn also realized he thought of Peter as a friend again. He suspected the strange bond between them might have something to do with this. When Vorden was done with breakfast, he had returned to the dorm room to collect Peter. He knocked on the door and asked Peter to come out. He didn't go in because he didn't want to see Peter eating his leg. Because the 2 days of rest were over, every student was required to start training in their combat classes again. Peter was still registered in the elemental ability class. He was currently known as an Earth user, and Vorden had a feeling that Duke was keeping an eye on him. After Peter had told them that Duke had gifted him with the level 2, 3, and 4 Earth ability books, Vorden was puzzled by this. He couldn't understand why Duke had given Peter those books. The only thing they knew was that for whatever reason, Duke wanted Peter to become a level 4 Earth ability user. The three of them split up. Peter and Vorden went to the elemental class, while Quinn went to his own combat class. Now that Peter had been fed twice in a short time, the system assured Quinn that he could last at least 24 hours before he needed to feed again. In that time, Quinn needed to come up with a solution, or if he couldn't, he would have to find Fex and ask him for help. Vorden and Peter were together in the elemental class. However, they pretended to no longer be on speaking terms with each other. Of course, Vorden still kept an eye on him, but he made sure to stay a few meters apart from Peter or to always have a few other people between them. Their teacher was currently making a demonstration. She was showing the different uses of her water ability. She was trying to teach the students that with a little bit of creativity in the use of their respective elements, they could even make their own skills. All the students were gathered around her, and they were watching her display. While everyone was looking at the teacher, Vorden noticed that a couple of students had come over to where Peter was standing, and it looked like they were nudging him a bit. The three of them started to move away from the crowd, towards the back of the classroom, out of sight of the main group of students. Are they working for Duke? Vorden thought. They won't do anything to him here, and Peter has just been fed, so he shouldn't go on another rampage. Peter had never seen these two students before and was a bit afraid, but when they approached him, and he saw they both had power levels of 2.4 and 2.6, he was no longer worried. One of the students whispered into Peter's ear, "Move to the back of the classroom." Once they were at the back, one of them whispered again, saying, "Duke has a message for you." Make sure you bring your Earth ability up to level 4 by the end of the week. If you do, there will be even more rewards for you. Peter agreed, because he didn't know what else to do. As he looked down at his watch, all he could see was the number 1. Now that he had become a ghoul, he couldn't even use his Earth ability anymore. He was wondering how he was going to solve this in a week's time. Quinn can change the number on his watch by tapping it. Maybe I can ask him how he does that? Peter thought. Fex had woken up that morning and tried his best to fit in during his time at school. He hadn't thought much about what happened last night, and he really didn't care that much about it. He was just trying to help a fellow vampire out. But if they didn't want his help, that was their choice. After staying at the school for only 2 days, Fex had already learned something. Life at the school was quite boring. He had gone out to the city to talk to others and experience some new things, but doing things alone on his own sucked. For some reason, the other students were ignoring him. He chalked this up to being the new kid. Fex didn't know the real reason for this was that his watch was displaying he had a power level of 1. When he made his plan to explain his ability to the school, he hadn't realized there was so much discrimination towards weak people at this school. When coming to the human world, he was hoping to try new things and meet people, but right now he was wondering if he had made a mistake. Then he remembered there was one person that had spoken to him. Although it wasn't a very pleasant meeting, he still remembered it. The first student that he had met was Erin. After doing a bit of research of his own, he was able to find out her name as well as her schedule. Because Fex was a new student, he had to decide which combat class he wanted to go to, and after finding out Erin went to the beast weapons class, Fex knew what class he wanted to sign up for. Chapter 166 Tricking Duke. The 2-day rest period was over, and students were now required to go back to classes as usual. Vorden, Peter, and Quinn didn't feel like they had rested at all. Over the last few days, they had experienced one high-tense situation after another. In the morning, Quinn and Peter didn't go down to the canteen for breakfast. They had decided to stay in their dorm room. While Vorden still had the regenerative ability, he had decided to cut off another one of his limbs, but Vorden actually looked scared about cutting off his own body part again. At first, Quinn was against him doing it again, but Vorden had convinced him it was necessary to make sure Peter wouldn't go crazy with hunger again today. When Quinn had finally agreed, they decided to cut off a bigger limb, because it would give Peter more meat to feed on. Eventually, they chose to cut off one of Vorden's legs. Quinn couldn't bear for Vorden to go through so much pain again. That's why he offered to help. With his greater strength, he was able to cut through the entire leg in one clean stroke. It took Quinn some time to mentally prepare for it, but he finally convinced himself that it would mean less pain for Vorden, which gave him the resolve he needed to do it. Vorden looked scared when Quinn was about to cut his limb off, but all of a sudden his facial expression changed. Instead of fear, it now showed anger. Vorden shouted at Quinn, "Just do it, you little wimp." After eating human flesh for 2 days in a row, it seemed like normal raw meat was no longer an option for Peter. When he tried to eat it, he immediately threw it back up, like his body was rejecting the raw animal meat. From now on, Peter would only be able to eat raw human flesh. Quinn was quite upset about this, because he didn't want to see Vorden go through this painful process again. Quinn now wanted Peter to evolve as soon as possible, as hopefully this would help with Peter's dietary problems. After Vorden went down to the canteen to eat, Peter was looking at the black bag with Vorden's leg in it. He couldn't stop himself from drooling, and his saliva was dripping out of his mouth and falling onto the floor. "Are you going to eat that or what? Don't let Vorden's sacrifice go to waste," Quinn said, while holding a glass of Vorden's blood in his hand. They had collected it after cutting Vorden's arm off. It would have been a shame to let it go to waste. Quinn swirled the blood around in the glass before he drank it all in one big gulp. It tasted nice and sweet, and when he was finished drinking, he had a smile on his face. "How do you do it?" Peter asked with awe and horror on his face. "How can you be so calm about it all? How do you deal with this sudden change so easily?" "Trust me on this one, Peter. At first I didn't," Quinn replied, looking pensive. "Think of it this way. Everyone has multiple sides that they show to people. They are different with their family members compared to their friends, and they are different with their girlfriends compared to their family and friends. But does that mean those other sides don't exist when they are with different people? We choose to show people which side of us we want them to see. This way different people will form different opinions of us. I was scared too, but I choose not to show it to others. I was also very lucky that I found someone who helped me deal with everything." As he was saying this to Peter, his mind had immediately gone to Layla. Like he told Peter, He was extremely lucky that she was the first person who found out about his secret. Since she found out she had been nothing but supportive, she also helped him learn a lot about being a vampire. He wondered how different things might have been if it wasn't for her. While Quinn was talking to him, Peter had been trying to hold back from eating the leg that was in front of him. However, he could no longer stop himself. As Peter started chomping down on Vorden's leg, Quinn turned around to look away. Even though it didn't bother him much, it still felt wrong to him looking at one friend eating another friend's leg. Quinn also realized he thought of Peter as a friend again. He suspected the strange bond between them might have something to do with this. When Vorden was done with breakfast, he had returned to the dorm room to collect Peter. He knocked on the door and asked Peter to come out. He didn't go in because he didn't want to see Peter eating his leg. Because the 2 days of rest were over, every student was required to start training in their combat classes again. Peter was still registered in the elemental ability class. He was currently known as an Earth user, and Vorden had a feeling that Duke was keeping an eye on him. After Peter had told them that Duke had gifted him with the level 2, 3, and 4 Earth ability books, Vorden was puzzled by this. He couldn't understand why Duke had given Peter those books. The only thing they knew was that for whatever reason, Duke wanted Peter to become a level 4 Earth ability user. The three of them split up. Peter and Vorden went to the elemental class, while Quinn went to his own combat class. Now that Peter had been fed twice in a short time, the system assured Quinn that he could last at least 24 hours before he needed to feed again. In that time, Quinn needed to come up with a solution, or if he couldn't, he would have to find Fex and ask him for help. Vorden and Peter were together in the elemental class. However, they pretended to no longer be on speaking terms with each other. Of course, Vorden still kept an eye on him, but he made sure to stay a few meters apart from Peter or to always have a few other people between them. Their teacher was currently making a demonstration. She was showing the different uses of her water ability. She was trying to teach the students that with a little bit of creativity in the use of their respective elements, they could even make their own skills. All the students were gathered around her, and they were watching her display. While everyone was looking at the teacher, Vorden noticed that a couple of students had come over to where Peter was standing, and it looked like they were nudging him a bit. The three of them started to move away from the crowd, towards the back of the classroom, out of sight of the main group of students. Are they working for Duke? Vorden thought. They won't do anything to him here, and Peter has just been fed, so he shouldn't go on another rampage. Peter had never seen these two students before and was a bit afraid, but when they approached him, and he saw they both had power levels of 2.4 and 2.6, he was no longer worried. One of the students whispered into Peter's ear, "Move to the back of the classroom." Once they were at the back, one of them whispered again, saying, "Duke has a message for you. Make sure you bring your Earth ability up to level 4 by the end of the week. If you do, there will be even more rewards for you." Peter agreed, because he didn't know what else to do. As he looked down at his watch, all he could see was the number 1. Now that he had become a ghoul, he couldn't even use his Earth ability anymore. He was wondering how he was going to solve this in a week's time. Quinn can change the number on his watch by tapping it. Maybe I can ask him how he does that? Peter thought. Fex had woken up that morning and tried his best to fit in during his time at school. He hadn't thought much about what happened last night, and he really didn't care that much about it. He was just trying to help a fellow vampire out. But if they didn't want his help, that was their choice. After staying at the school for only 2 days, Fex had already learnt something. Life at the school was quite boring. He had gone out to the city to talk to others and experienced some new things, but doing things alone on his own sucked. For some reason, the other students were ignoring him. He chalked this up to being the new kid. Fex didn't know the real reason for this was that his watch was displaying he had a power level of 1. When he made his plan to explain his ability to the school, he hadn't realized there was so much discrimination towards weak people at this school. When coming to the human world, he was hoping to try new things and meet people, but right now he was wondering if he had made a mistake. Then he remembered there was one person that had spoken to him. Although it wasn't a very pleasant meeting, he still remembered it. The first student that he had met was Erin. After doing a bit of research of his own, he was able to find out her name as well as her schedule. Because Fex was a new student, he had to decide which combat class he wanted to go to, and after finding out Erin went to the beast weapons class, Fex knew what class he wanted to sign up for. Chapter 167 Hand-to-Hand. Along the way to the beast weapons class, Quinn met up with Layla and Erin, who was tailing behind her. When they met up with each other, Erin couldn't help but stare at Quinn. Then suddenly, thoughts popped into her head about the book, Bite Me or Love Me. Her face went bright red and turned it away. Images would appear of certain people doing strange things with each other. Although Quinn had no clue what was going on, he was just happy it didn't seem like she was freaking out about the whole thing. It seemed like, because Erin grew up knowing nothing about them, it really didn't come as a shock to her, because she had no point of reference. On the way there, Quinn was thinking of possible safe ways to approach Fex. He would need to talk to him in a public place where he couldn't use his abilities as freely, but before that he needed to find out what class he was in or where he was. They arrived in the large training hall, and Leo was there as usual. They hadn't seen each other since he had saved them from the Dalki, and the girls were a lot warmer to him now. As soon as they entered, Leo looked over to their direction and smiled. "If I didn't know any better, I would have thought he could see us," Layla said. "He probably just knows where the entrance is, and when he hears students' footsteps, he smiles at us," Erin replied. But Quinn had a feeling that wasn't true, as he hadn't seen Leo smile at the other students before, and it seemed to be only directed at the three. What they didn't know was Quinn's aura was always easy to spot, and as soon as he stepped in the room, Leo immediately knew it was Quinn. This time Leo had all the students gather at the front of the training hall where a small platform had been raised. The platform was a similar size to a boxing ring. Only there were no ropes, and it was raised about a foot off the ground. Leo stood on top of this platform as he explained the upcoming lesson to everyone. However, just before the lesson started, a new student had entered the room. Leo was completely distracted as he noticed something, for this student had the exact same aura as Quinn did. "Hey, this is the beast weapons class, right?" Fex said as he walked through. "Who's that?" "I think it's a new student." This late into the term, that means he must be a draft evader. When they looked at Fex, their interest quickly died down after seeing he only had the number 1 on his watch. He wasn't worth them even getting to know, and it would only waste their time. Seeing this, Fex was once again annoyed. What is wrong with these people? Fex thought. As he said those words, he started to sniff about in the air. Something seemed to catch his attention. He moved closer towards the smell, until finally, he realized where it was coming from. And Quinn looked at Fex the same. They both knew instantly that this was the person who they had fought with last night. Fex gave Quinn one look up and down before walking off to find his own spot to watch the lesson from. This reaction surprised Quinn, to say the least. Isn't he going to say anything? I'm sure he realized I was the person fighting him last night. If I can smell him, he can definitely smell me, Quinn thought. But Fex wasn't bothered in other people's business, and that included vampires. He already gave out a lending hand, and if Quinn didn't want to take it, that was fine with him. As long as Quinn didn't try to get in his way, then there was no trouble between the two. The lesson had started, but it was hard for Quinn to concentrate. Still, the lesson seemed to be an important one, so Quinn tried his best to listen. As you all know, we have been learning the basics of each weapon. I haven't taught you how to use each weapon individually, but only explained how to activate the beast's weapon's power for a greater result, Leo explained as he drew out his katana blade. But there will be times where one's weapon will break or certain weapons will prove ineffective against the enemy. Leo then threw his blade at the wall behind him. It flew fast, and half of the blade managed to go into the wall until it stopped. In these times we will have to use our own fists. The students started to mumble. Using fists against beats and the Dalki sounded barbaric to them, almost suicidal. If we have abilities, why would we rely on our hands? Yeah, and even then if I didn't have a beast weapon or was too tired to use my ability, surely guns would be better? The students started to mock and laugh at Leo quietly. I see. So you think that today's lesson is pointless, correct? Leo asked. They were unaware that Leo could hear everything they were saying. Suddenly, Leo started to tear off his military clothing, and underneath he revealed a chest-piece armor that had the face of a demon on it. That's when the students also noticed he was even wearing beast gear on his feet as well. Erin, Layla, and Quinn all had seen this equipment before. It was the same equipment Leo had worn when he killed the Dalki. You all know that our old technology, our weapons were useless against them, and our nuclear weapons were rendered useless before we even had the chance to try them. Even armor-piercing bullets from a sniper rifle at most could knock a single-scaled Dalki back. However, when activating the beast gear, the higher level tier of equipment, the more empowered our bodies become. Leo said. At first, The students thought they imagined it, but they could all see clearly that the blackish armor around Leo's chest was starting to light up and turn red. Little particles of steam were emerging from the piece as well. Right now, if I was to throw a fist with all my force, I could crumble the foundations of this entire building. The steam started to disappear, and the chest piece's color started to return to normal. At that time, the students realized a certain pressure had disappeared, as if they were under a gravity heavier than they were used to had disappeared from the room. They didn't need Leo to demonstrate. They could all feel the power he held in his hands. So they finally figured out how to properly use the power of the beasts. Fix said. Well, looks like they advanced quicker than my father said they would. The power of the fist is useless if you cannot hit your opponent or if you do not know how to throw a punch, Leo explained. So for today's lesson, I shall be showing you a basic martial art that all soldiers are required to learn. For this, I will need a volunteer. Leo then started to look around the room until his head had stopped at one person. Quinn, how would you like another spar with me? Chapter 168 Martial Arts. Out of all the students there, Leo had selected Quinn. It didn't come as a surprise to the others anymore. Since the first day, it seemed like Leo was favoring Quinn. He would often go to the area he was in most. He was the only one that had a spar with him one-on-one, and Leo seemed to have saved his life more than once. Having no good excuse to refuse, Quinn walked up onto the platform. Hey, did that student always look like that? A student asked. I think so. I'm not really sure. I didn't really pay any attention to him before. It's a shame he is only a level 1. Otherwise, he would be good boyfriend material. A female student said. Ever since evolving into a vampire, Quinn's looks had slightly changed. He was no longer the weak, skinny, frail him. His body had filled up, and he looked like he had a proportion of muscles all over. The students never paid much attention to Quinn in the first place, other than those that saw him as a target to pick on. Now, standing in front of the class, they were able to see him better. Quinn and Leo were standing at opposite ends of the platform. Now for this session, once again, I would like you all to not use any of your abilities. Later on, we will try to learn how to combine your abilities with our fists to make more of an impact, but for now, forget about it, Leo explained as he looked at Quinn. Okay, when you are ready, I want you to come at me, and don't pull any punches. Leo assumed a fighting stance, and at the same time, a quest appeared directly in front of Quinn. High-level opponent detected. Defeat the opponent in battle. Reward, instant level up. It seemed like the reward for winning the fight was the same as last time. Although Quinn didn't feel like he could beat Leo anytime soon. But the quest reward did give Quinn an idea. So far, each level up required him to earn double the amount of EXP before. However, this changed when he evolved at level 10. If at every 10 levels he was to evolve, then Quinn could time it right and challenge Leo to a fight at level 19. The problem then was if he was to level up in front of Leo and the evolution process started straight away, what would he do then? As he got used to the system, Quinn had to start thinking about how to utilize it to give him an advantage over others. Let's see if you really are the person from last night. Fex, though, standing by the sidelines. It was unlikely there was more than one vampire here. There were often vampires sent as scouts at the military base, but they would be disguised as high-ranking officials. But Fex had never heard of one of these scouts being a student. Do you think Quinn will do okay? Layla asked Aaron. Do you not remember what Leo did to that Dowkey? It didn't even take him that long, while the 5 of us, including Quinn, struggled. Aaron replied, I admit, Quinn is strong, and I hate to say this, from what I saw, probably stronger than me. But we're just students and nothing compared to the ones above. The fight had started, and while Leo didn't move at all, Quinn started to dash in as fast as he could. He didn't have any of his beats gear on, so his stats were lower than usual, but he also wasn't being affected by the sunlight so much. Wow, he's quite fast. Seeing Quinn dash from his position, he was certainly fast, but not fast enough for people to think of it as an ability. Quinn threw out a punch fast, but didn't add any of his blood skills. He knew he was limited by what he could use in front of everyone, but he still wanted to test himself after not being able to land a punch yesterday. However, Leo was able to move his head to avoid it. Quinn then changed his fist and went to grab Leo instead. He hoped to throw Leo to the ground, but it was too late. The man had already pivoted on his foot and went for a spin. While doing so, he lifted his other leg in the air and managed to kick Quinn right in the head. At first, Quinn thought he could take the blow from the older man, but he quickly realized his mistake. The force was strong and caused Quinn to fall to the ground. Again, Leo said. Although the force was strong enough to cause him to fall, it didn't do much damage to a body like Quinn's. He tried attacking again, throwing punches of his own, but every time his attacks would come close, Leo would move or using the palm of his hands deflect the strikes. Then when he was attacking, he would use his legs. The confrontation lasted about 10 minutes, and finally, Quinn was starting to get worn out by the whole thing. Yep, those sloppy punches of his, that's definitely the person I fought with yesterday. Fex thought. Okay, that's enough, Leo said. Quinn was now huffing and panting a little. Even though he hadn't used any advanced abilities, like the flash step or hammer strike, it seemed to be more tiring fighting against Leo. During the fight, Leo had displayed many different techniques, but what stood out to the students was how he thought. There was definitely a style they all recognized. He would always use the palm of his hands for defense, and whenever he was attacking, he would use his legs. What you have just witnessed is the martial art we teach our soldiers here. It is named the Pugna style, a mixture of karate amongst other things with the hands, while using a form of taekwondo in our legs. It's important, the reach in our legs is longer and more powerful than our arms. But our arms are more versatile and flexible. Leo then started to look at the crowd of students again. Is there anyone here who would like to have a go? This is your chance to have a one-on-one battle with your teacher here. Most of the students were nervous. They didn't have much hand-to-hand combat experience because they focused on using their abilities or training with weapons most of the time. Other than the street fighting they did in school, they all felt it would be embarrassing for them if they were to go up. Out of all the students there, a single person had his hand raised. I wouldn't mind having a crack at it, a student announced as he sauntered forward out of the crowd. When he came into view, Quinn was surprised to see who it was. Just what is he thinking? Quinn thought. Oh, if it isn't the newbie, Leo said with a smile. Sweeping his black hair back with his hand and taking a look at Quinn, Fex had a big smile on his face. Bring it on. Chapter 169 Vampire vs Elder. MVS 169. While Fex was growing up, he had always been told how weak humans were, how they had to rely on the power of others to survive, but after seeing Leo, he could tell this wasn't true, or at least what they used to know about humans no longer applied. Before heading up to the stage, Fex looked around the room and spotted Erin. To his surprise, she was standing right next to Quinn. He didn't already make her his, did he? But how? My charm didn't even work against her, Fex said. Still, it doesn't seem like she's been blooded by anyone. Maybe I can still use her? The group caught Fex looking over in their direction. The next thing they noticed was a cheesy wink with a smile. Seeing this, they all wondered who the wink was directed at, and cringed a little inside. That wink wasn't towards you, was it? Layla asked, thinking it was meant for Quinn. I guess. Quinn replied. It had to be at him, he thought. He was the only one who knew who Fex was, and he was looking right at them. Although the wink was actually directed at Erin, she had no clue of this either. In fact, she could hardly remember seeing the boy. The only thing that kept happening for some reason was, whenever she looked at him, her face would start to heat up a little as she felt embarrassed. Maybe he has a thing for you, Layla said. Layla's words had jolted Erin's memory, and she remembered where she had seen the boy before, when she was in the library reading a particular book. Yeah, that has to be the reason, Erin said nervously. She felt like the wink must have been a sign. Perhaps he was planning to use it as blackmail against her. Tell everyone that she read those type of books. If others were to find out, her family even, she would be shamed for having such a dirty mind. She needed to keep the boys silent no matter what. Now Fex and Leo were up on stage, and even Quinn was a little excited to see the outcome of the match. He had fought with both of them and pretty much lost. Still, he was unable to get either of them to show their full strength. Hey, Quinn, Layla whispered. Is he a vampire as well? How did you know? Quinn thought. Unless she had a nose like his, Fex looked just like every other human. Well, you've been acting strangely ever since he got in here, and you did tell us someone attacked you last night, right? Well, who do you think's going to win? She asked. I'm not sure. I was just thinking that myself. If it was just hand-to-hand combat, I felt more useless fighting against Leo. Not only that, but Leo has years of experience. I just can't see a student beating him. Layla then went to have a closer look at Fex. He did indeed seem young. The same age as all of them. Well, if it's like the books I've read, Vampires can live for a lot longer than humans. Some of them are eternal, so maybe he looks young just because he wants to. Is that true? Quinn asked the system. Yes, vampires are able to slow down the aging process, although there are methods when doing this. A vampire can either go into eternal slumber. It's a method they use to stop their heart beating and everything inside their body. In a way, it's a near-death-like state. The only way to wake vampire from eternal slumber is to have them take a drop of blood from the same family. During this period, they will not age, and their body will not deteriorate. The second method, well, let's just say the second method isn't very nice. Quinn had long learned if the system didn't want to elaborate on any details. Even if Quinn asked, it would choose to remain quiet. It made him wonder just who was able to create such an advanced AI, to the point where it seemed no different from a human. No technology that he knew of was able to do that yet. Well, if this vampire is a lot older than he looks, then maybe him and Leo will be evenly matched, Quinn replied. I doubt that. The system added. The boy in front of you, I don't have any memory of him in our records, and the way he acts would also suggest he has a young mind. If I was to take a guess, he should be no older than you. Watching this fight would be an excellent insight for Quinn. He still had no idea how strong other vampires were, and this would be the first look at another one for him. Leo got into the same fighting stance as before and moved his fingers, telling Fex to come forward. Unlike Quinn, Fex didn't rush ahead and calmly walked over. Then when their fists were a touching distance away, Fex got into a fighting stance of his own. When looking at the two, their fighting stances were quite different. Leo had both hands out in front of him, similar to karate or a little like boxing, while Fex had both hands down by his side, but his knees were slightly bent. Slowly, Fex was circling Leo. The tension was high, not knowing when either of them would attack. Fex was the first to strike. He came in throwing his fists in quick succession, two to the head and then another to the body. However, just like before, by using his palms, Leo was able to knock them away. He could block them, Fex thought. But I only pulled back on my speed a little. I was sure from watching the match earlier this would be fast enough. After blocking the attacks, Leo followed up with a kick aiming towards Fex's head. Seeing this, Fex jumped back and tried to grab the leg, but at the last second it seemed like the angle had changed, causing Fex's grab to miss. Again, it's like he knows what I'm going to do. Fex inwardly was starting to get annoyed. Then while bringing his leg back, he was able to catch Fex on the head with the heel of his foot. He didn't use that against the last student? Someone from the crowd said. Touching the mark on his face, Fex smiled. Looks like I need to bring it up a notch. Fex went in and did the same, throwing punches rapidly only this time. In the same amount of time, he had thrown 3 to the head and 3 to the body. Leo was able to block the first 3 and the second 2, but the last one had gotten in and hit him in the stomach. He felt the powerful blow that had the weight of a hammer, but didn't let it distract him, throwing out his own sequence of kicks. The fight now continued with no breaks in between. While one focused on their fists, the other focused using their legs to attack. They would block each other's strikes while hitting each other once in a while. I don't know what Father was talking about. They aren't weak at all. As the fight continued, Fex got more excited, and he started putting more power into his punches. It got to the point where it was power beyond a regular human with no ability. Leo could feel this and could sense the energy inside him getting wilder. At first, he thought he had never seen such a fighting style or martial art before. So Leo decided to lead him on, hoping he would reveal everything he had, but perhaps he had played with the boy too long. While looking at his energy grew wilder and stronger, it started to remind Leo of the Dalki, and in turn, this soured his mood. It brought back specific memories. He started to remember that there was one time he had faced something similar. It was a Dalki. Usually, the Dalki were reckless when they fought, but the toughest opponent Leo ever had to face was one which knew how to use martial arts skills, and right now, the resemblance was too close. Why was this boy's and the Dalki fighting style so similar? Leo thought. Chapter 170, A Bloody Kick. So far, the fight had shown an amazing set of skills from both of the contenders. Leo had displayed some techniques that he hadn't used in the battle against Quinn, making him realize how much better Fex was at fighting. However, Leo felt like he had allowed the fight to go on for too long, turning Fex into an overconfident lad. Although he was banned to use his abilities, Leo's was slightly different compared to the others. His ability was always on. He needed it as he used it as a type of vision for himself. Since he was blind, he would constantly activate his ability to see the aura of living things around him. In turn, this also allowed him to see the flow of energy in the body of his opponent. When an opponent attacks, their energy flow would move before the body of the person did. This was the same when a person used their abilities as well. If Leo concentrated by just a half, he could change his vision to almost a bird's eye view, being able to sense all those around him. It was thanks to this skill that he was able to survive countless near-death situations during the war. However, even if others were to have this ability, it would be useless in the hands of someone who was unable to exploit it. Fex threw out stiff and straight fast blows with his fist, but knowing what he was going to do beforehand, Leo was able to block all of the attacks. What? But I was sure I increased the speed quick enough, so he won't be able to block it, Fex thought. Then, when Leo prepared for a kick, he still could see where Fex was planning to dodge. Using his other foot, he was able to shift his weight and change the direction. It landed right in Fex's face, but Leo didn't stop there since he knew the damage was minuscule. He continued to kick in rapid successions, aiming for where Fex would be each time. Can he read my mind? What's going on? Fex asked himself out of frustration. Even he was unable to comprehend what was happening. When the kick stopped for a breath of a second, Fex thought he had finally gotten a break. But before he could do anything, another kick was aimed to him from above, an axe kick, which slammed down on the back of his head as hard as he could. The blow was harder than Fex thought it would be, so he was unable to prepare himself in time. His legs gave in, and his head bounced off of the ground. He laid there, lying lifelessly on the floor. Did Leo just kill him? A student said. Isn't that going too far for a simple student? Before Leo himself had realized it, he had been too consumed by his past memories. It had affected his usual clear mind. However, he knew the student was safe since his aura was still burning brightly. Fex slowly started to get up, pushing his body up with his arms, with his nose slightly bent. Unfortunately, I didn't expect to meet such a skilled student that I seem to have taken the fight a little too seriously, Leo said. Just think that you were lucky. If I was using a sword in this match, you wouldn't be alive. Standing on the sidelines, Quinn was a little worried. This loss might have hurt Fex's pride, causing him to go on a rampage. If that happened, he didn't know what to do. But then, Fex's next action surprised him. Thank you for the battle, teacher. You have taught me how useful your martial arts truly are, Fex said as he bowed down and walked off of the stage. Wait, Leo said. Please tell me, where did you learn to fight like that? Leo had wanted to fight Fex after realizing that he and Quinn carried the same aura. Quinn excited him by showing amazing growth each time, and he had expected Fex to be the same. Yet, Fex was different. He was a few levels above Quinn. As you can see, my ability is only a level 1. My family has always been weak, so we decided to train in the form of martial arts to help build a good foundation. Fex answered. After hearing this, the students quickly remembered that Fex was only a level 1. When they witnessed how good he was at fighting, some of them had the idea of recruiting him for the next portal outing. Still, no matter how skilled he was at fighting, it wouldn't help him against beasts. Unlike Leo, who had the power of the beast gear helping him, they all felt like Fex could never obtain a piece of equipment that high in level. It was a strange situation. He could be useful if he had high-level equipment, but he would need to be strong enough to get the high-level equipment in the first place. The only way they felt like Fex could move up the ladder was to swear loyalty to a faction or the military, helping him raise his ability to the point where he could get the appropriate gear. And only then would he become someone who would be a threat. Of course, Fex's ability wasn't really level 1, but due to the watch being unable to detect a vampire's MC points, it displayed level 1. As Fex walked back to the crowd, he quickly snapped his nose back into place. He also had bruise marks all over his body, but they would soon heal, so there wasn't much to worry about. With the 2 demonstrations over, it was time for Leo to start the class. Everyone was asked to spread out so they would have space of their own in the room. The first thing Leo started to demonstrate was the kicks. He proceeded to demonstrate different types of kicks one by one, and the rest of the class would follow step by step. It felt a bit awkward at first, and most of the students who had never done such a thing found it quite difficult. However, Quinn's body was more flexible and agile than most, allowing him to perform the moves quicker and learn them faster than the others. Leo could see this, and once again, was impressed with how Quinn was performing. Then when he looked at the other person he was interested in, he felt a little disappointed. Fex had decided not to bother learning the kicks properly. It wasn't because he thought they were useless or not helpful. He just found out firsthand how good the techniques were, but it was because vampires were very traditional. If they were to alter their arts or try to use something else, they would not be happy with him at all. While performing the different sets of kicks, Quinn started to have a thought. When punching, he was able to combine the blood spray with it. When throwing his fist, he used his blood swipe. Perhaps there might be some way to combine the blood swipe with his kicks, creating a new skill of his own. Although, he would have to wait to practice this on his own later. Leo had demonstrated a total of 3 different kicks. One was the roundhouse kick, which was a kick that came out from the side. The other was using their dominant foot. Then they also had to practice the kick using their subdominant foot. The third kick was the axe kick performed at the end, lifting the leg upward and then down using your heel to hit the enemy. Once he had finished demonstrating all the kicks, it was time for them to test them out against each other. Leo asked the group to get into pairs and spar with each other. However, they were only allowed to perform these 3 kicks with each other while also only blocking using their legs or dodging. This was Quinn's chance to approach Fex, as he could see he was all on his own since no one wanted to pair up with him. Chapter 171 condition. It was clear from the start that no one would want to go up against Fex. And this time, it wasn't just because he was a level 1. He had put on an impressive performance, and it was clear that if they were to go up against him, they would stand no chance. If they lost to him in a spar, a level 1, they would become the laughing stock of the whole room, and the incident would spread throughout the entire school. Seeing this, it was Quinn's chance to approach Fex. He was in a public place with students loitering around, so he wouldn't be able to try anything funny, and if he did, for whatever reason, go out of control, there was one person in the room who Quinn was confident that could deal with him, Leo. While Fex was looking around the room for Erin, he noticed that she had already teamed up with Layla and had lost his chance to get close to her. Although, he noticed a smell gradually coming towards him, one he was familiar with, the other vampire in the room. Fex was still unsure who exactly was this person, but to be sent to the base on his own, he would have to be a high-ranking member in their family. Or maybe, in a similar situation to Fex himself. The other crazy thing, though, was he didn't know who Fex was himself. One of the possible heirs to the 13 families, someone nearly all the vampires knew. But there were those that were sent on missions from a young age who had yet to return, so it was understandable if a few people had never seen him before. For those reasons, Fex had decided to offer a helping hand, hoping not to sour the relationships between the families. The families didn't usually get involved with each other's business unless the head elder asked. Hence, he was careful to also not be nosy. "I guess you already know what I am," Quinn said while looking at Fex, keeping his fist closed, ready for things to turn at any second. "Do you know who I am?" Fex asked. Thanks to the system's inspect skill, Quinn did know. Fex Sanguinis, correct? When Quinn answered, he was unsure what to say at first. If he said his name, would Fex get suspicious of how Quinn knew? Or would they think they were comrades? It was a risk. Quinn had no clue how many vampires there were, and how close of a relationship each one of them held with each other. Still, this way, if he did ask how he knew his name, Quinn could make up a type of lie. In the end, he chose to reveal the vampire's name as the system advised him to do. "Quinn, I'm warning you right now. Never reveal your family name to another vampire. If you do, they will target you," the system said. "But can't he use his inspect skill as well?" Quinn asked. "That is unique to the system, Quinn. You are not an ordinary vampire. The others don't have this kind of system like yours. This whole thing you are going through, you are the first person to experience it. Which is why I can't help you as much along the way. There are even things that I don't know about the system." Quinn then started to wonder just which skills were unique to the system, and what are the skills that all vampires had knowledge of. Well, it's to be expected. I thought maybe my fame was starting to die around the other families. Fex said, swiping his hair back. "Well, it's clear you're not from my family. Otherwise, you wouldn't have attacked me yesterday, but I won't pry into your business because that would just be rude of me. Anyway, go ahead. It seems you didn't approach me for no reason at all." Quinn was struggling with deciding on how much information he should reveal. If he made one type of slip-up, then it would reveal the position he was in. "I remember you saying that if I needed any help, you would offer your hand." Quinn then took in a deep breath. I need you to help me with the ghoul problem of mine, the one that you captured the other day. Fex then smiled. I thought as much. I see. Perhaps a vampire recklessly transformed a human, and then left you a halfling, or lesser, to deal with the problems. Who would be so irresponsible to turn someone into a ghoul without preparing everything beforehand? It seemed like Fex was coming up with his own ideas about why Quinn was here, which was a good thing. It meant that Quinn didn't have to come up with his own story and could just stay silent. In doing so, Fex was the type of person who thought his guesses were right on. Judging by your silence, I'm pretty close, aren't I? He assumed as he started laughing. Haha, when I become the family head, with my genius brain, our family will rise to the head position. So you can help then? Quinn asked. By simply looking at Quinn's face and seeing his fighting skills the other day, Fex could only surmise that Quinn wasn't well trained or just wouldn't amount to much in the future. This contradicted his earlier thought, though there was something else that was bugging him. He had seen Quinn use the shadow ability. It was an ability that the other vampires hadn't used in years. It suddenly gave Fex an idea. Sooner or later, he would be caught by his family and be sent back. He knew this was the case, but if he could lighten his punishment in any way, this might be his chance. If he asked Quinn about the ability, of course, Quinn wouldn't tell him. All the families thought the ability had been lost. Looking at Quinn, it was clear whichever family he worked for were keeping it a secret that they had found it. Perhaps trying to overthrow the head family. If Fex was able to get information from Quinn, how he got this and which family he belonged to, then perhaps the punishment he would receive would be lighter. But the greed was starting to grow inside Fex. Observing Quinn's ordeal and the fact that the ghoul yesterday was in a crazed state, he really needed his help. Maybe he could get even more out of this deal. Of course I can help you, Fex said. Those words gave Quinn hope. The sooner they dealt with Peter's situation, the quicker they could get on with their lives. But I do have one condition, Fex said, looking over in the direction of the two girls. You see, the one with the golden hair. All I ask for is some alone time with her. As Quinn turned his head, he knew straight away who he was talking about. It was Erin. Why? Why her? Why can't it be someone else? Quinn asked. Quinn felt that, perhaps, Fex would need someone to give him a supply of blood while he was here, just like Layla was to him. Otherwise, every 2 days, he would starve with hunger if Fex was the same type as him. But it didn't sit well with Quinn that it would be someone he personally knew. Out of all the people he could have selected, he chose his acquaintance. If you need blood, I can provide it to you, Quinn added. Oh, don't worry. I have no problem obtaining blood. Although, it would be nice to have a little blood pet. I promise you that if you just agreed and let me meet and talk with her, then I'll help you with your little ghoul situation. Are you going to hurt her? Quinn asked. What? Are you crazy? Of course not. Fex replied. So what will it be? Chapter 172 Bad Timing. There's no way we can trust that guy, Layla shouted. Currently, the whole group had finished their combat classes for the day and were inside Quinn's room. He had just informed them all of what had happened yesterday when he had rescued Peter. He also included what had happened at the combat class and what Fex's request was. I hate to admit it, Vorden said, but I kind of agree with Layla on this one. What is another vampire doing in the school in the first place? Is he here because of you, Quinn, or maybe Peter? I don't think that's the case. Honestly, he seems to be disinterested in me. He also said something that he wasn't meant to be here either. I don't know if he was telling the truth or not. Maybe he was trying to get me to reveal myself. Quinn felt like pulling out his hair at this moment. There were so many things running through his head. I wish there was like a manual or something on how to be a vampire. They have so many rules I just don't understand. The thing is, I can understand if he wanted you or Peter, but why Erin? It doesn't make any sense. Vorden shook his head. Inside the room, Erin had been here the whole time, silently listening away. So far she hadn't said a single word, as if her mind was someplace else. That I have no clue about either. All I know is he said he wouldn't hurt her, Quinn replied. Hey, I have a question, Layla said. How come when you're in the sunlight you get weak, while he doesn't? Is he some kind of special vampire? Because when we left the training hall he seemed to be walking fine. Quinn also noticed that as well, and when looking at Fex closely he noticed a ring on his finger. He knew instantly that it was the same ring from the shop. It was a ring that required you to defeat a total of 10 advanced tier beasts to obtain. It only caused Quinn's worries to grow, It was clear that even if he didn't ask, none of them were powerful enough to stop him. While the others were thinking about what to do, Vorden pulled Quinn off to one side so they could have a private conversation with one another. "Hey man, not to add to your worries or anything," Vorden started, "but I think we got another problem you should know about," Vorden said. Vorden then went on to explain how a few of Duke's men had come up to Peter in their training session and how they had asked him to learn the level 4 ability by the end of the week. It seemed like everything was happening at the worst possible timing. "Then we have no choice," Quinn said. "We don't know if Duke is going to keep a closer eye on Peter or what he plans to do. If we don't get Peter off this new diet of his as soon as possible, then we might have a serious problem on our hands. If it's out of trusting the vampire boy and the Duke, I think right now I trust the vampire more." "You might be right about that one," Vorden replied. "But the problem is, how do we convince Aaron?" As soon as Vorden had finished those words, Aaron stood up straight and had placed her hand on the hilt of her blade that was currently sheathed by her side. "I'll do it. I'll go see this trash," Aaron said. "What? Aaron, you're not thinking straight. He's a vampire. He could be planning to do the same thing to you as Quinn did to Peter," Layla shouted before pausing. "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that in a bad way. I'm not afraid of him. That fool needs to learn his place. He needs to learn not to mess or blackmail others ever again," Aaron said. The others felt a little touched. It seemed like Aaron had changed, as if she was fighting for their sake, something that she had never done in the past. But little did they know, Aaron was still the same as always. When she was talking about blackmail, she was talking about her own situation. She was afraid that if she didn't go through with this, there was a chance that Fex could tell everyone about what she read. She regretted giving him an easy time when the two of them were at the library and now wished she had taught him a lesson, and now this time she would. "Don't worry, I'm confident in my skills. If I was to lose to scum like him, then I deserved it for not training hard enough." Aaron's stubborn side had shown, and at this point, Layla was the only one trying to convince her to not go while the boys remained silent. Even Peter wanted to get this whole thing over with, and if Layla just had to become a vampire's blood bank, then it was a small price to pay. Peter had to do worse things than that right now. "I think it will be fine. We shall meet on the roof," Vorden explained. "The three of us will wait by the door to make sure no one else comes upstairs. If anything fishy happens, we can come out and help her." "Do you think he'll be okay with that?" Peter asked. "Didn't he say he wanted to meet her alone?" "The two of them will still be alone and will just be a short distance away. If he truly says he will do her no harm, then he should at least accept these conditions," Vorden explained. A plan had been set. Although it wasn't a very good plan, it felt like it was the only thing they could do at that moment. Quinn had left the room to go meet up with Fex to set the meeting point tonight, while Aaron wanted to go to the practice room to brush up her skills before the meeting, but before she left, Vorden stopped her by holding her hand. "Sorry, I'm going to need to say this," Vorden said. "Listen to me. Aaron, if you need any help or anything, you come running to me, all right? I promise I won't let this guy get you. Vorden, you are the only trustworthy one in this group. I would never rely on any of the others to protect me." Aaron still believed Vorden was the best option out of everyone out there. She had seen him get serious and even beat a student from one of the Big Four. Although Quinn was powerful, he had too many weaknesses an enemy could exploit if they were to find them out. "What the hell? Why doesn't he treat me like that?" Layla asked in disbelief. "Am I the only one he treats like crap? What the hell did I do?" Vorden had grown close to his circle around him. He had never had this many people this close to him before, and Aaron was one of the very few people who had approached him first. He didn't want to upset this little family that had been created. Unfortunately, Layla got the short end of the stick due to the little one misunderstanding the relationship between Quinn and her. Vorden then went off with Peter to go gather the strongest abilities he could find, first heading to find Berg and one other ability. Chapter 173, My Puppy. On top of the first year building outside the roof, it was a calm day. It wasn't too hot, and it hadn't rained in a few days, so the ground was dry. Quinn stood there opposite Fex while the others stood just behind the roof door. The door was slightly open as the four of them peeked to have a look at what was going on. Erin's hand was twitching as she had it hovered over her sword's hilt. The others had to do everything in their power to convince her to not go out there and start a fight straight away. They were interested in what Fex had to say, and if she was to go out with her head full of steam right now, it would ruin everything. The best option for them was to come out of this with no fighting. If that did happen, Vorden was prepared. He currently had an ice ability, a fire ability, and also a slow regenerative ability. While trying to get the ability, it took him longer than he thought. The original person, he got it from last time he couldn't find. Luckily, at the last moment, he was able to find another student with a similar but weaker version of the ability. He needed to make sure to keep the regenerative ability just in case things didn't go to plan. If Fex really didn't have a solution, then once again, he would have to prepare himself to remove another body part. It was also unlikely that he would be able to get Syl to fight for them anyway. At most, Vorden could convince Ratton. Syl was unreliable, so Vorden never went into a fight relying on him. "So you understand the terms then?" Quinn said. "We will be waiting just on the other side of that door, and if anything happens to her, we will." "I know," Fex said with a yawn. "I already gave you my word, didn't I? You should already know a vampire's word is sacred. It's not something that can easily be broken. And about the ghoul problem, you promise you'll help us straight after, right?" Quinn asked. "I already have it sorted," Fex said confidently. "Just a fair warning. She knows what you are, so she will be cautious," Quinn replied. "Looks like you're breaking rules all over the place," Fex said. "I guess it isn't a problem if you plan to turn her eventually." Fex had never seen a vampire break all the rules so casually. There was only one person who was as daring as him, and that was Fex himself. Most vampires were boring and strict, very traditional in the sense, and had been for so many years. It was why Fex yearned to go to the human world. The more he was finding out about Quinn, the more his interest grew. But with his position, he could get away with a few things here or there. While Quinn, he had never seen him before, he felt like the more he stayed around this guy, perhaps interesting events would start to unfold. Quinn had done everything he could, but it was still hard for him to trust Fex. Even the system didn't seem to have a solution to the current problem, so he just wondered what Fex had that they didn't. As soon as she opened the door, Aaron was ready to head out in his place. "Aaron, please remember the plan," Layla said. Aaron nodded and then headed straight out as the other three watched from behind the door. At first, Aaron walked slowly, but as she got closer and closer towards Fex, she started to walk faster. The closer she got to him, the more annoyed she was at seeing his face. "Oh, the beautiful Goldilocks has finally come out. I have a proposal for you," Fex said. But suddenly the walking turned into a jog. After hearing Fex's voice, the anger inside her only got worse, and then finally, she had enough and pulled out her sword. "I thought I had already warned you. If you were to mention what you saw in the library, I would teach you a lesson," she shouted. "Looks like she isn't sticking to the plan," Layla said. "The library, have these two met before?" Peter asked. "It seems like there might be a bit of tension between the two that we didn't know about before," Quinn added. "Damn it," Vorden shouted. "She's going to get herself killed." As Vorden went to open the door, Quinn pulled him back. "Just wait, Vorden. If he really wanted to do her any harm, why would he do it in front of all of us? And if he did kill all of us here, then he would only be hunted down by the school." What Quinn had said made a lot of sense to Vorden. Still, he couldn't help but worry. Hearing Aaron's words, Fex was a bit confused. He could tell she was angry, but apparently it had something to do with their last meeting. Wait, it couldn't have something to do with that book, could it? As she charged forward, her face had now gone bright red once again, and she pulled readied her sword, but suddenly, her movements started to slow as she felt something wrapping around her legs and arms. When she looked at Fex, she could see him doing something with his hands. "That's it, I'm going to save her," Vorden said. "Wait," Peter shouted. "That's the same thing he did to me. I don't think he's trying to hurt her." The string-like substance continued to tangle all over her body. When Aaron looked around, she noticed that there were small little daggers placed around the roof with a little ring on top. Finally, though she was completely restricted and could no longer move, Aaron was not at the level where she could use the ice abilities with just her mind. She still required small movement with her hands to activate her ability. She would need to be at least a level 7 ice ability user for that. So right now she was completely defenseless. Other than her weapon, she had no other piece of beast gear on her. So her strength was that of a regular person, so there was no way for her to break the strings around her. "You know, after you left I read that book myself. No wonder you got so heated up," Fex remarked. "If you would like to do the things mentioned in that book, I would be happy to help you." "Go screw yourself, you sicko," Aaron shouted. "This is what I get for being nice," Fex said. "Anyway, hear me out. During my time here I need a puppet as well as a food source. Now, since you decided to punish me in the library, you have the congratulations of becoming both of those things. Quinn, do you understand what he's saying? Layla asked. I have no clue. I mean, I understand the food part, but the puppet thing I have no idea, Quinn replied. System, is he talking about making her a blooded one? Quinn asked. No, the Sanguini's family have the ability of string. However, their combat style is unique. They are extremely nimble and skilled with their fingers, but their actual combat powers themselves are lacking. Hearing this didn't make Quinn feel any better. If Fex was a vampire with lacking combat skills, then what did one with good combat skills fight like? To perform at the best of their ability, they need something called a puppet to do combat for them, while they control them behind the scenes. Fex then walked up behind Aaron, while walking a selective path towards her, avoiding all the strings attached to the small blades he had thrown. I'm not becoming your puppet, Aaron shouted. I'm afraid you don't have much of a choice, Fex replied as he stabbed 12 needles into the back of her body. Chapter 174 Good or Bad. As the 12 needles were implanted into Aaron's body, a strange feeling started to overcome her senses. It was as if something had clicked in her brain. The strings that were binding her feet and hands were loosened and started to disintegrate until they were no longer holding her back. What did you do to me? Aaron asked. I wanted to show you what being my puppet actually means, Fex replied. Aaron went to swing her sword and moved about, yet it seemed like her movements were back to normal. They weren't slow and everything, so she tried to do what she could do before. Still, she felt like something was tugging on the back of her brain. Whatever you did to me, get rid of it now. She lunged forward and swung down her sword. However, as she did, Fex moved a single fingertip, and concurrently, the course of her sword changed, missing the target and merely swung to the side. My body, did it just move on its own? It was a strange feeling for Aaron to suddenly lose control like that. Let's see what you got, Fex shouted. He was now moving his fingers at an incredibly fast speed, and for every different action that he did, it would move Aaron's body. At first, Aaron tried to resist and fight against the Fex's control, but it felt useless, as if she couldn't do anything. When she soon realized that there was nothing that could be done, she stopped resisting and just went with the flow. Doing this, she started to realize something. Fex wasn't just moving her body about in a random order, but he was actually performing a certain set of moves. Her swordsmanship was faster and more skillful than before, and the sound of her strikes when sliding through the air sounded fast and harsh. While her movements were soft and flexible, as if she was doing a dance, it was swordsmanship she had never seen before, one that surpassed her own basic skills that were unrefined. While doing these movements, she started to concentrate. She discovered that it wasn't as if the strings were pulling her along. She could still feel that her own body was doing all these movements, so it must have been possible for her to perform these as well. Right now, she was noting down all the actions she was performing, and when she had gotten the hang of it, shards of ice would leave the blade as well. What is Aaron doing? Layla asked. I thought she would be attacking him, but she looks so beautiful. With the ice surrounding her along with the beautiful skills being shown by Aaron, it was as if they were all watching a performance. I don't think it's her look, Vorden said as he pointed at Fex, who was at the back, moving his hands and fingers. You are a lot better than I thought you were going to be, said Fex. It looks like I was right to choose you. When Fex had seen enough, he detached the strings that were on Aaron, and she suddenly stopped right there. Her body was no longer being guided by the strings. Immediately, not wanting to forget the feeling she just had, she tried performing the same movements. At the start, it seemed to be going well, but then, the movements just didn't have the same flair as when she was attached. She tried again and again like a person who was possessed, but it was nowhere near the same level that she was performing before. You, show me again. Do what you just did again, Aaron demanded. Now, Fex said. If you started to demand things from me and I complied without complaints, it wouldn't be very fair, would it? A relationship should work in two ways. If you don't want to tell me about it, you know I can just start getting really nasty. Lifting her hands, Aaron planned to use her ice abilities this time before he got close to activate his weird puppet thing once again. But her hands stopped midway as a little tingling feeling reappeared at the back of her head again. Oh, I'm afraid it's a little too late. You see, with the needles implanted in you, I can reattach my strings to you at any point in time. Fex explained. Now that I have shown you how my swordsmanship works, it's time that I get something in return. Walking towards the lady, step by step, Fex got closer, and right now, there wasn't a thing she could do to stop him. I can't take this anymore. It's not fair on Aaron. We forced her into this, and it's clear that she doesn't want to go through with it. What if he's planning to turn her? I'm going, Vorden said as he barged through the roof door. Wait, Quinn shouted. They were so close that Quinn didn't want to ruin the deal they had. So far, he had stayed true to his word, and Aaron didn't have a mark on her. He felt like he was so close to solving the problem with Peter, but after hearing Vorden's words, Quinn realized how selfish he was being. Aaron had no reason to be involved in their affairs. In fact, none of them here did. Only Peter and Quinn needed to be there, and if he wanted to solve his own problems, he should have come up with his own solutions instead of trying to rely on someone else. As soon as he heard that Fex had a plan, he immediately decided to take the easy route of asking him rather than trying to brainstorm for an appropriate method. Let's switch, Vorden. I'll teach this guy a lesson. Ratton said, No, they're my friends, and this time, I'm going to do something about it myself. As Vorden ran out, he gathered a fireball in his hands and was getting ready to throw it towards Fex. However, just as Vorden was about to let the flames go, Aaron's body had moved and was now right in front of him. She slashed her sword down and Vorden had to jump out of the way, rolling onto the floor. Vorden, that wasn't me, she said. How dirty, Vorden shouted. You're going to use her as a shield? Why don't you fight yourself? With Aaron getting in between the two, Vorden was unable to use his full strength. At any point in time, Fex was able to move her to either block the attack or get in between the two of them. Then, a gust of wind seemed to go straight past Vorden as he felt his hair rise. When he looked in front of him, he could see Quinn running past with all his beast gear on. He had his boots activated and was rushing forward at full speed. Just like before, Fex moved Aaron in front and commanded her to strike her sword, but Quinn showed no signs of slowing down, and it looked like he wasn't even going to bother dodging. Shadow control. Just before the sword reached his side, he lifted the shadow from underneath his foot and blocked the attack, slowing it down. Then, using the flash step, Quinn was able to appear behind Aaron and went straight for Fex. Wait! Fex shouted. Stop! This wasn't my intention. You guys win, he said as he held up both hands. Just what was Fex planning? Chapter 175 My Word. With his arms raised, it truly did look like Fex had already surrendered. Not only that, but Aaron was freed from her constraints and could move by herself again. As soon as she felt the weird connection leave her body, she had decided to take a few steps back and was now standing near the door beside Peter and Layla. Come on in, Quinn, Vorden shouted. With the two of us, we can easily take this guy out. However, Quinn was still cautious, having no intentions to let his guard down. He remembered fighting Fex last time and also saw him go up against Leo. If Vorden had seen these things, perhaps he wouldn't have been as confident as he was right now either. There is no trick, said Fex. You can ask the girl who I have broken off the connection with. I have done what I wanted to do. All I wanted was to show the girl what it would be like if she was to become my puppet. I just presented the power and skills that I would share with her. And in return, I was going to ask for some blood. Was I in the wrong? Quinn then pulled out a flask from one of his trousers pockets and threw it over to Fex, who was able to catch it. Fex opened up the lid and could smell the sweet fragrance emitting from the bottle. If you need more blood, then you can just come to me, Quinn said. Just leave us be and I won't get in your way and obstruct you in your mission, so you shouldn't get in the way of mine. Fex then took a gulp of blood from the flask as a huge grin slowly made its way to his face. Wow, it's pretty fresh, but as I told you before, getting blood here isn't a problem for me. Look, I didn't want to sour the relationship between us two. As I have said, this is all a misunderstanding. Did I ever hurt her? You took control of her body and you forced her to attack me, Vorden said. Just get rid of whatever you put into her body. In that way, you won't be able to control her again. It looks like I've hit a nerve with one of you. I didn't realize she was already taken, Fex said. As fellow vampires, we should be looking out for each other. As a sign and the start of our friendship, I shall do as you ask and remove the needles. Quinn was wondering why Fex's tune changed so quickly. Before, it seemed as if he was ignoring him, and now he wanted for the two of them to be friends. It just didn't make any sense for him. Could he have realized that Quinn was different from the other vampires? But the real reason why Fex had changed his mind about the whole thing was because of Quinn's shadow abilities. He had seen them being used before, but didn't see much of what it could do. During the short confrontation with Aaron, he noticed something about the shadow and how it was possibly a lot stronger and useful than he thought. If he goes through with the process, are you able to tell me if he does anything suspicious? Quinn asked the system. Not really, but Aaron should be able to tell. When the needles are removed, she should know. The system replied. The group decided to go through with it, but only if they could stay by Aaron's side. At first, she wanted Fex to use it on her once more to allow her to experience the feeling and skills he had shown her again. However, after being used to fight against her comrades, she felt disgusted with herself. She was so weak at that moment, and everything had been done against her will. Even she wanted the needles to be removed. Aaron's back was facing against Fex while the others stood by her side, with Layla holding her hand. Peter, Vorden, and Quinn were ready to jump in at any moment if he was to do something fishy. The strings were connected to Aaron once more, and she felt the tingling sensation at the back of her mind. Fex then yanked out his hand, and at the same time, all 12 needles that were attached to her body were pulled out simultaneously. It's done, Fex said. The others saw the needles had been removed, and Aaron could no longer sense a strange feeling inside her body. If you ever wish to become a puppet of mine again, then feel free to find me. Come on, let's get out of here, Layla said as she started to walk off with the others towards the exit. Wait, don't you want help with your ghoul situation? Fex asked. Quinn had thought, since Fex hadn't got what he originally wanted, that there was no reason for him to keep his side of the deal. His words right now were a surprise to him. I may not follow many of the vampire's traditions, but I do follow one, and that's to always keep my word. You did as you said, and you brought her to me. Now, in return, I will help you. The girl carried on walking ahead. Layla had decided she didn't want to be a part of any of this anymore, and it looked like Aaron was worn out by the whole thing. If the boys wanted to go through with the original plan, then she trusted Quinn to make the right decision. We can't trust this matter to him, Vorden said. I'm telling you. But time was running out. It was nighttime, and they didn't have much longer until the curfew. Vorden would have to go through the pain of having his limbs removed again. Also, so far, Fex had kept all of his promises, so why would he suddenly break one now? Please, Quinn said. Help us. Very well, Fex replied. Follow me. Chapter 176 Fex's Bad Plan. As the three boys followed Fex, they couldn't help but wonder what kind of plan he had. He said he had prepared everything beforehand. Quinn was thinking of all the possibilities. Given how young Fex was and how the system hadn't recognized him, it was clear that the two vampire minds were a generation apart. Meaning perhaps there were some things that had changed that even the system didn't know about. Maybe in the time period, they were able to find a substitute for the human flesh? Whatever the plan might have been, it had to be better than letting Peter roam around and kill people. As they followed Fex, they realized that he was leading them back to the student dorms. Until finally, they had reached a room not too far away from theirs, located at the end of the hall. It was the last room. I hope you're hungry, Fex said as he opened the door. As soon as they entered the room, their jaws had nearly dropped to the floor. Quinn immediately looked out in the hall to see if anyone had seen them before closing the door shut. What is the meaning of this? Quinn asked. Currently on the floor were 7 different students who had been tied up. They each had a blindfold around their eyes and a piece of cloth gagging their mouths. Their arms and legs were tied up using the same type of string that had been used on Peter. This is what someone should have done before they turned him into a ghoul. I noticed he was a crazed ghoul, so he shouldn't need much human flesh to evolve. He would need a different type, right? So here you are. I brought you a different person he can eat for each day of the week. Fex explained. Quinn realized then that it wasn't that the system didn't have any way, and Fex did. It was the fact that they were 2 different types of vampires. The system knew that Quinn would never consider this an option, so they would never suggest it. While Fex, even though he was interested in humans, saw them just as a thing to be used. So what? You plan to just kill these students? Vorden asked. The school would find out if 7 students just went missing. This isn't really a plan. Hey now look who's being the stupid one. No one said anything about killing, Fex replied. The size of meat that a ghoul needs to eat only needs to be about that of a shoe. So there's no need to kill, no need for the school to find out. But won't they say something happened? If I was them, as soon as I left, I would get out of here. Peter said, worried as he saw the students wriggling about, scared for their lives. Although you guys seem to be friends, it's like you don't know much about vampires, do you? Fex shook his head. If I use my influence powers, then I can make them forget anything ever happened. As for their missing limbs, I can replace them with a memory saying they lost them in an accident fighting with each other. When Quinn was thinking up of different ways to help Peter, he too had come up with a similar option. The only problem was Quinn wasn't confident in his influence skills. Whether it worked or not depended on two things: if the person he used it on had good mental strength and his charm stats, which were low at the moment. If there was the chance it didn't work, then Quinn would have to kill someone with his own hands. The killing wasn't the part that Quinn didn't like, but killing someone who had done nothing wrong or no harm to him was different. These people in the room were strangers to him, and they had families waiting for them back home. Who was he to decide what happened to them? If he was to abuse his powers, then he would be the same as the very people he hated. Well, Quinn, what do you want to do? Peter asked, looking at him. Peter had already made up his mind. He was sick of worrying about this and just wanted to get it over and done with. He convinced himself if he didn't at least resort to this, then there would be more body bags, and a missing limb was better than a body bag. I can't, Quinn said. I don't even know these people that well. Quinn's reply surprised Peter, as he was sure Quinn had felt the same way, as if he just wanted to find the quickest solution. If it makes it easier for you, some of these people aren't good people. Fex then went over to two of the male students off to the right side and lifted up their head, revealing a few bruise marks on their face. You see these two here? They were my roommates. As soon as I entered the room, they started ordering me around. I refused, and you know what they tried to do? Beat me, so I gave them a beating back. I hadn't even said a word to them yet. What about the rest? Quinn asked. Well, the rest were randomly selected. They just had bad luck, that's all. Look, someone had to draw the short straw, right? While Vorden was looking at the students, he recognized one of the female students. It was the same girl who he had copied the regenerative ability off the other day. Now it made sense why he couldn't find her earlier. It must have been due to Fex keeping her in this room. Seeing this, though, gave him an idea. Quinn, there is something we can do, Vorden said. Vorden explained how, when he was coming up with Plan B, he managed to get a list of the first-year students' abilities and what class they belonged to. On this list, it stated that out of all the first years, there were 3 students who had regenerative abilities. Before, he had never considered this an option. Only now that they were able to erase their memories did he think of this. There's still a problem, Quinn said. Even if we manage to get those 3 students, we still need 2 more. But at least it's a start, Quinn, Vorden replied. They explained their plan to Fex. After all, they needed him to be in on it to make sure he erased their memories. Although he complained a little, he did accept in the end. He then lifted the female student of the ground, who had the regenerative ability. I'm telling you guys, we could get this all over and done with. Are you sure you want to do it this way? Fex asked. Quinn nodded in response. All right then. Fex then pushed the female student towards Quinn, and he managed to grab her just before she tripped and fell over. This is your problem, not mine. I'm not going to do everything, so one of you is going to have to cut off her body part. I'm not a sicko who gets pleasure seeing people in pain, so I'm afraid I'm not going to volunteer myself. Chapter 177 Advantage. The boys started to talk about which of them should cut off the leg, but none of them wanted to do it. Vorden knew firsthand what the pain was like, and argued that he had already done his part, while Quinn was the one who cut off Vorden's leg. In the end, it was a unanimous decision that Peter should be the one to do it. He had similar strength as Quinn, so he should be able to cut it off clean. Peter grabbed the meat cleaver from the kitchen counter and walked over to the female, all the while Vorden and Quinn held her down on the floor. This time, they had also put several towels where the cut was supposed to be made, in order to not make a big of a mess like the last time. The two had to hold her down even though her mouth was already gagged. Furthermore, she was blindfolded, but she had heard the whole conversation going on between all of the people in the room. At first, she thought it was a twisted, sick joke being played by her friends. But as soon as she heard them deliberate and talk more about the matter, she slowly realized that it was becoming a reality. Not being able to see anything either was making her go mad, as she imagined that they might do all sorts of things to her. As Peter knelt down on his knees, his hands were shaking. Quinn and Vorden were strong, so now, her movements were minimal, but it didn't stop him from seeing the tears rolling down her face just underneath the blindfold. "Come on, Peter," Warden said. "You're happy enough to eat the damn thing, but you can't cut it off." With those words, Peter closed his eyes and swung the meat cleaver down, but at the last second, he tried pulling it back, causing the meat cleaver to only reach halfway through the bone. Muffled screams were heard as blood started to pour down her leg. "Peter, you made it worse," Quinn said as the two swapped positions. Quinn quickly banged a fist on top of the cleaver, pushing it to completely go through. When the leg was detached, he quickly put it inside a black plastic bag. Using one of the towels, they tied it just above the wound and raised her leg to cause the blood flow to slow down. Eventually, it had healed to a point where it was a stump again. The woman was no longer struggling or screaming. She had just passed out from the fear of everything. "For more times," Quinn said. "We have to do this 4 more times." While the female's leg was being prepared for Peter to eat, Vorden was busy tending to the girl and clearing up the bloody towels. However, before Peter could eat the leg, Quinn went over and dipped his finger into one of the ends. Blood type A+. Quinn wanted the O blood type. This way, he would be able to raise his charm stat. He realized that with everything happening around them, they were bound to get caught sooner or later. If that was the case, then one of the most useful skills that he had would be the influence skill. It was why Fex was able to walk around so confidently and didn't have to worry about getting blood. He was confident about his ability to erase the memory of any student regarding that the incident ever happened. Although it didn't make him much stronger in battle, it would do in the future. If he could use his influence skill without any worries, then he would also be able to get blood from other students without having to worry about the repercussions. He then licked his finger, and once again the message appeared. A+ blood has been consumed. An additional stat point in strength has been added. Strength 18. Peter wasn't feeling hungry at the moment, so the leg this time didn't look as appetizing as before. He thought that it was due to the fact that he had seen the girl screaming and crying right before it was cut off. Because of that, he didn't feel like eating it just yet. While the others were waiting for the leg to heal and for Peter to start eating, Quinn went over to the other 6 students who were still on the ground. Inspect. Quinn had used his inspect skill on each of them, and the main thing he was looking for was their blood types. Out of the 6, there were 2 O blood types, 1 AB+, 1 A+, and also 2 B+ blood types. While he was here, he might as well increase his stats. The memory of each student would be wiped by Fex anyway, so it would be a waste not to. Quinn then went over to get another knife from the counter and went up to each of the students. He would make a small cut on the bag of the student's calf. He would then dip his finger and take a lick of each one. After taking a drop of blood from each student, Quinn decided to check his new improved stats. Strength, 19. Agility, 18. Stamina, 17. Charm, 12. At the moment, these were Quinn's current base stats without wearing any equipment. With the 2 O blood types, Quinn did as he said he would, putting them into his charm stats. While doing all of these tasks, Fex was keeping a close eye on Quinn and couldn't help but come over. "Are you trying to see which one tastes the best?" Fex asked. "If you want, I can get you a glass or something, so you can have some more." "Oh, no need. I'm not hungry." As Quinn said those words, he realized that this was the first time he was talking about blood with another vampire, as if it was food. It was strange, but at the same time nice that he didn't sound crazy. "I was just trying to get as many different people's blood types as possible," Quinn answered. "You're a strange one." "Oh, I know. I bet you're one of those blood freaks who has to find the perfect type of blood," Fex said as he shrugged his shoulders. "To me, blood is just blood. It all tastes the same no matter who it comes from." Hearing Fex say this, it started to make Quinn think. "Did you have any of their blood before we came here?" Quinn asked. "Nah, I can actually last quite a while before I start to crave for blood. Although, I still appreciate the gift that you gave me before," Fex replied. A realization came over Quinn. If Fex wasn't consuming the blood of every human he came into contact with, that would suggest that it didn't have the same effects on him as it did to Quinn. It would be understandable if he was doing it for reasons to not be caught. However, he already had these 7 people in the room, yet he didn't consume blood from a single person. "System, what is the meaning of this?" Quinn asked. "I think you figured it out already," the system replied. "As I've said to you before, your vampire powers are unique, different from the others. What applies to you doesn't mean it will apply to them, and the same can be said the other way round. But this, Quinn, this is your advantage over the others. Chapter 178 Spying. Certain vampires had weird habits. It was probably due to the fact that they were either stuck indoors or mostly stuck in the dark all the time. This was what was going through Fex's head as he looked at Quinn. Even Fex was considered weird for having so much interest in humans, but so far his experiences of them hadn't been great. No one would talk to him, and of the very few interactions he had with all of them, he was attacked, first by Aaron, then by his 2 roommates. Finally, when the leg was fully healed on the female student, Peter no longer felt as weird about eating the leg in front of him. Before he felt like he was eating a part of her, but now that he could see she was fine, he couldn't let it go to waste. The first bite was the hardest, but once he got the juicy taste of flesh into his mouth, he couldn't stop. He continued on until almost nothing was left but the bone. Ghouls, a little bit of a messy eater, aren't they? Fex said, trying to crack a joke. But Quinn was in no laughing mood. Quest update. 3/7 pieces of human flesh has been consumed by Ghoul Peter Chuck. Once again the energy surged through Quinn's body. But he knew it wasn't him getting stronger, but Peter instead. But this message had only soured his mood, realizing he would need to do this 4 more times. Maybe we should just take the easy way? Quinn thought for a brief moment, but quickly changed his mind. They took off the blindfold from the girl, and then Fex started to use his influence skill. His red eyes glowed, and so did the females he was looking at. She appeared in a dazed state, as if she was unaware of anything around her, as if she was asleep, but with her eyes open. Fex gave simple instructions of what happened that night. He was sure not to overcomplicate things, and at the same time not give too many details, otherwise it could cause problems with her mind. The last thing he mentioned was telling her to sleep for another hour. While one of them watched the hallways for any oncoming students, the other would carry them and put them in a place where it would be a while before a student spotted them. Certain sections of the library, just outside the staircase on the top floors, and so on. What if someone sees them? Peter asks. There are students who are knocked out all the time. Although to the watch system it will just appear like they are sleeping, everyone else will think something happened to them, Vorden explained. Think about it. When you were sleeping outside the room, apart from the first day, did people really bother you? Peter knew Vorden was right, and he felt like Peter only gained extra attention because he was a level 1. But after the first day, several students just ignored Peter like he was some homeless dog left on the street. After they finished doing everything they needed to do, they left Fex in his room on his own. If you need me, you know where to find me, Fex said. As he saw the 3 boys walk off, Fex started to feel a little bored. Everything that happened today was one of the first interesting things that had happened to him since he got to the human world. Then when they thought about it, it was one of the most interesting things he had done in his life so far. The day had arrived, and Peter wasn't feeling hungry this morning as he had eaten a meal last night. But that still didn't mean there wasn't a list of jobs they needed to do. They had more problems right now than just trying to find meat for Peter. Because Duke was hot on their heels, they needed to convince him that somehow Peter was learning the ability books handed to him. So the 3 decided to once again split up for the morning. Vorden had memorized the students who had the regenerative ability, and at breakfast, he would try to track them down and find out what club classes to, and when would be the best time to nab them. While Peter and Quinn had decided to pay a little visit upstairs to the VIP area. Their aim for today was visiting Logan. Not once had Quinn seen Logan in the canteen area, and he realized he never saw Logan around the school much even before that. While also training in the pod that Logan had, he realized he never really left the room, and there was no need for him to. The VIP room had facilities such as a shower and a toilet, and whenever he wanted he could call and ask food from the shop to be delivered to his door. Long time no see, Logan greeted as this time, he answered the door still with bags under his eyes. When he finished rubbing his eyes though, he noticed someone else behind him. It looks like you brought a friend with you as well this time. They entered the room, and Peter couldn't stop looking at all the strange gadgets inside. He also noticed the level 8 on Logan's watch that seemed to frighten him a little. When did Quinn get to know someone so powerful? He thought. Once he sat down, Quinn started to explain what he wished Logan to do. However, this time, Quinn was afraid Logan would decline. He had already asked so much from him, and he had nothing to give back in return. But without saying anything, he put on his metallic glove and got to work on the watch while it was still on Peter's hand. After a few minutes, he sat back in his chair. All done for you, he said. Now on the watch, the number 2 was permanently displayed. If we want to come back and increase the number, are you okay with that, Logan? I thought you might ask something like that, so I already did it for you, Logan said. If you twist the top of the watch, then the numbers will change, going from 1 all the way up to 6. So you will be able to fool anyone into thinking you have a high ability. Every time I work on something, I just impress myself more and more. Quinn was feeling even more guilty. Logan hadn't even asked any questions of why he needed to do such a thing and was providing his services for free. If you ever need any help, Logan, feel free to ask me. I know, you probably don't need me too much, but even if it's for testing something in the game, please, I want to help you. With that said, it was almost time for the combat classes to begin, and the two of them had to leave. As they left the room, Logan quickly booted up his computer and started typing away until he suddenly stopped. If I do this, he will probably never trust me again. It was nice speaking to a person for once, rather than a machine, Logan said. But at the same time, I can tell you are hiding things from me, and I can only help you if I know more. Recording device activated, the computer system said. As he activated the recording device inside Peter's watch, he could now hear everything. Chapter 179 Alone. When Quinn had first come in and made the request, he had explained that his system had hidden the level of his actual ability. It made sense why he needed to adjust the score on the watch. This was why when Logan saw Peter and they had made the same request, it secretly made Logan happy inside. He thought that perhaps Peter had been put under the same type of system that Quinn had. He saw Quinn as a friend now and was happy to help him, but his urge to find out about the system far surpassed that of their weak bond. When touching Peter, he realized how he was quickly disappointed. He didn't have the same reaction as he did when touching Quinn, which meant right now, he couldn't think of a reason why Peter would need to change his level. If it was something as simple as to avoid others from bullying him, it was too risky to do. Once they found out how weak he was, they would report him and the watch would be replaced. The only thing he could think of was, Quinn and Peter were hiding something from him. So he came up with a plan to implant a recording device into the watch. At first, he was originally going to do this with Quinn. However, he quickly felt him and Quinn get close together. He enjoyed the small conversations they would have. He decided it wasn't right to invade his privacy and believed Quinn would eventually tell him. It was time for the two to split up. Peter would head to the elemental class with Vorden, while Quinn would head to his normal weapons class. For the start of the lesson, they continued to go through the kicks that had been done the other day. Quinn worked on perfecting them while in his head, imagining the feeling of blood swipe going through his legs. Usually, he would just have to think about activating the skill, and the system would do the rest for him. The energy inside his body moved on its own, but he could still feel everything that happened were only automatic. If he wanted to combine his blood swipe with his leg techniques, he had to recreate that feeling in his legs while throwing out a kick. It was too bad his mind had been preoccupied with other things. Otherwise, Quinn would have loved to test it out right now. While practicing, though, he noticed once again that Fex was standing by his own. Not a single person had approached him. It was to the point where Fex was just lying about and looking at the ceiling in boredom. Now, Leo didn't do anything about students who didn't want to learn. In his opinion, in the end, it really was up to them if they wanted to participate or not. However, if they were to disturb the class, he would deal with them. Seeing this, Quinn decided to approach Fex. He didn't feel like Fex was a bad person, but more like a child who didn't know what was right and wrong. If Quinn could just approach him and get close, maybe he could learn more about the vampires that might be after him. Hey, do you want to spar? Quinn asked. Fex got up from the floor and looked around him, noticing that there was only one person Quinn could have been speaking to. Who, me? Fex asked, tilting his head a bit. Quinn nodded. Maybe I can use my full strength against you this time? Yeah, right. But if you insist on an arse kicking, then I'll be happy to give you one. Fex replied with a smile. Fex was a good fighter, and Quinn was hoping to learn from him. If in the future he really did become his enemy, it would be useful to learn how not only he fought, but how others fought as well. There was also the fact that recently Quinn had gotten a stat boost. He knew he wasn't as powerful as Fex yet, but maybe slowly as he consumed more people's blood he could change that. The two of them sparred using the kicking techniques only, and Leo also noticed that Fex could actually perform the kicks quite well. It seemed like he was performing them badly before just because he didn't want to. Still, The two of them knew not to show their true strength or speed, otherwise the others around them would start to get suspicious. While Layla and Aaron were practicing their kicks against each other, Layla noticed Aaron was incredibly distracted and was constantly looking over at where Quinn and Fex was. She was never interested in Quinn before, even after learning he was a vampire. So it had to mean she was looking at Fex instead. After last night, she tried to repeat the movements while she was under control multiple times, but they just weren't right. She wanted to feel them one more time. She felt like she was close, but something was just missing. But as she looked at Fex's face, it filled her with disgust. She would never allow herself to be controlled by another person. In another training hall, the elemental class was taking place again. Voden and Peter did their usual thing, keeping their distance from one another, but at the same time not too far. The lessons usually started off with an explanation, demonstration, and then students would try to replicate what they were being taught. At the end of each lesson, there was free time. Students could practice fighting against each other, or practice on their own trying to perfect and get a hang of their skills. So far the whole lesson had passed without anything happening, and it was only in the last part that the same men that approached Peter the other day had approached him once again. So Peter, I see you finally reached the level 2 Earth ability, but your progress is a little slow, don't you think? The student who had approached had quite a skinny frame, and it looked like he hardly had any fat on him. His face was even sunken in by the cheekbones. It was as if fate had decided how he would look from birth, for the name given to him by his parents was Bones. Although Bones himself didn't look intimidating, Vorden could see he was confident when approaching Peter. While looking around, he saw a couple of other students also looking in their direction. They were probably working for Duke as well. The Duke wants to make sure that you progress as fast as possible, and the easiest way of doing that is through a practical assessment, wouldn't you agree? Why don't the two of us have a little spar? Although Vorden wasn't close enough to hear what they were saying, he was able to tell they were in some sort of trouble just from the look on Peter's face. Then when he saw them walking off in a certain direction and clearing a space around the two of them, Vorden knew what was happening. They wanted to test his abilities when Peter had no abilities. Chapter 180 Tricking Bone. The room was full with students minding their own business, practicing their elemental abilities. Most of them in the room were Earth users, as that was the most common ability distributed throughout the world. It was also the easiest to raise up a few levels ability-wise, but if you wanted to reach the peak of the Earth ability, you were required to join the military and move up. In one of the corners of the room, Peter had been taken by Bones, a tall, skinny student who also had two other students by his side. They each formed a triangle-like position, with Bones in front of Peter while the other two stood behind him. Vorden had his own fair share FO fighting experiences, and just from looking at this, he knew what they were planning to do. He quickly needed to think of a plan and started to look around the room. Otherwise, they were going to get found out. They couldn't risk Peter getting taken away now, not while he was still a ghoul. A single day without flesh would make him go crazy. And although Quinn believed Peter would remain silent, Vorden did not. All right, Peter, it's time to see what you got, Bones said. However, Peter was far too nervous to hear Bones properly and was thinking about what to do to get out of this mess. Why did these guys have to come and get me now? Peter thought. Is the watch not proof enough? These guys, are they still trying to ruin my life? Well, if I'm going to get caught anyway, I should just kill them. Just then, Peter managed to catch Vorden walking up from behind them and then walking to the side. Come on, Peter, are you ready or what? Bones shouted as he was starting to get agitated. Vorden had now stopped off not too far next to them. He started to perform certain moves, and earth pillars and walls were created as he performed these moves. It was clear that Vorden had copied quite a high-level earth ability, but Peter was just wondering what did that have to do with him? Then he noticed that Vorden was repeating the same set of moves, and then pointing to himself afterwards. Does he want me to copy him? Peter thought, but just as he was thinking that, he felt a blunt object hit him in the stomach. When he looked down at what had hit him, he noticed it was an earth pillar. I don't have all day, you little twerp, Bones shouted. Peter was surprised at how little the attack had hurt. It was as if someone had given him a small nudge, but knowing the others would expect a reaction, he held his hands around his stomach and started to hurl forward. While continuing to look over at Vorden, Peter then looked at Bones and started to copy each action Vorden was doing. First was a step on the ground. An earth wall was then lifted from the floor. Vorden made sure to create a small one, trying to mimic a level 2 user. It was only because he had stolen a level 4 Earth user's ability that he was able to still create Earth skills at such a distance. And thankfully, the others were all distracted, looking at Peter. To the outside, it just looked like Vorden was practicing some form of martial arts. Peter then threw out his palm, imitating Vorden, and the earth wall formed a worm-like shape, still attached to the wall. "Is that enough for you?" Peter asked. Bones then walked up to the wall and placed his hand on it, lowering the wall down. He continued to walk forward until he was directly in front of Peter's face. An earth pole was formed into Bones' hand, and he whacked Peter right across the face, leaving a large red mark. The taste of metal started to fill Peter's mouth as blood formed. At that point in time, he had to do everything to stop himself from just jumping on top of Bones and ripping at his neck. "That's for wasting my time. If you did that in the first place, we could have gone home already," Bones said as he started to walk off away from the others. "Peter, make sure you reach level 4 in time, or else." As the three were leaving, Peter could do nothing but watch them go. He hated the fact that even though he now had the chance to fight them, he had to hide that fact. However, when Peter looked at the three people just about to leave the training room, he noticed Vorden was standing in front of them, blocking their path. "Hey guys, it seems like I have no partner in training today. Do you mind helping me out?" Vorden asked. "What the hell, scram out of here," Bones said. "Oh, you're happy to practice with me right here and now," Vorden shouted, making sure everyone could hear. A few seconds later, and Vorden was already casting his earth spells, aiming it at all three of them. The sudden attacks and Vorden's versatile use of the earth abilities didn't allow Bones and his men to last long, as Vorden managed to give each of them a thorough beating without getting a hit a single time back. Once classes were over for the day, Vorden and Peter met up together in the library. They each used a book to cover their faces as they talked to each other using the silencing orb. The orb meant that as long as no one was at the table, none of the others around them could hear. "Okay, so do you remember the plan?" Vorden asked. "Tonight, I want to try to get all three of those regenerative ability users. There are 3 places most likely we can get them. Dinner time after the canteen, we can follow them, just outside their dorm room, or before they return to their homeroom classes. All we have to do is convince each student and lead them to Fex's room to deal with the rest. Now this is important, Peter, because each of us are going to have our own person we're going to follow. Me, you, and Quinn will each have one person, so don't mess this up, okay?" Although Peter was no longer weak like before, Vorden still couldn't rely on him. "What about the 2 other people?" Peter asked. If I'm not satisfied after these, then does that mean we're going to have to kill more?" When Peter asked this, Vorden looked at him carefully. Usually, a person would be quite worried, but Peter actually said those last words so casually. Did he change after killing Earl? Vorden thought. He's getting more dangerous. "Stop being such a hypocrite," Ratton said. Vorden chose to ignore Ratton's words for now. Technically, he wasn't being a hypocrite himself because he had never done such things. "We will leave that to Quinn. I'm sure he will think of something in that time frame," Vorden replied. With that, the 2 of them had their targets that they would follow for the day. However, unknown to both of them, when they thought their conversation was protected and being kept secret by the sound orb, it actually wasn't. Because Logan had heard everything.